OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, Liverpool fans are back. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. It was a short little hiatus there where you were the banter era, but it's over now. Klopp was giving it the big one on the pitch last night, and so therefore all is right with the world, right? Right?
Right. Good morning.
Shane is here, Colm is here.
Ger Shane, good morning.
Thanks.
It was pretty interesting, a pretty interesting outcome. How an entire season can swing on the ball coming back off the upright, and Seamus Coleman not hacking you down.
At that point, yeah, when James Tarkowski's header was looping goalwards towards Liverpool's net, they hadn't won a game in 2023, and this could have been the nadir of the season and possibly the Jurgen Klopp era at Liverpool. But struck the post it did and came back, and 15 seconds later, Liverpool are ahead.
Whatever about Seamus Coleman's error, right? Whatever about Seamus Coleman's error, with all due respect, it's Jordan Pickford's goal.
Wow.
He's got the assist. I mean, Núñez might have had like a nice ball into the middle, but it's Jordan Pickford running out of the goal like he was controlled by the computer. That's how I play FIFA.
Yeah.
I accidentally get control of the keeper.
I'll put in the press X or something.
I bring him out and I'm like, where's the goalkeeper? It's like, oh, I was controlling him.
If anything, his anticipation was too good, Pickford, because he was really thought that ball was going to go to Cody Gakpo.
He was like, there's the goal. Mo. There's the entire goal for you. Just tap it in there.
You're low on confidence. I know what I'll do. I'll give you nothing to aim at.
Yeah. Oh, Conor Cody's mistake though for the second goal was almost as bad. Like, just clear the ball there, Conor. You're centre half. The ball's right at your feet.
I have some sympathy. He just didn't want to score the own goal. That was inevitable because, you know.
It struck me as a man who couldn't use his left foot. Use your bad foot and whack it out. He was more thinking of getting this onto his right and shepherding out of play, but
there is a difference though between like high-end footballers and those not so high-end. Bednarek's own goal at the weekend, right, to cost Nathan Jones his job, versus Kieran Trippier keeping the ball out on the goal line. It's a hair's breadth on the goal line, and you're kind of like, what is Conor Cody? Is he more Jan Bednarek or is he more Kieran Trippier? And it turns out,
well, he could have been more Matty Bartrip for Spurs, the own goal that won Manchester United the game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's pretty much exactly what happened when the ball was crossed in and tried to clear and put it into the roof of her net. And Conor Cody could have seen those highlights back and thought to himself in that split second, just leave the ball go by, because Ashley Cole was a great man for a dummy pretending to clear it and it would go across the area, and it was high risk defending but big reward if it works out. Because if that worked out for Cody, that's going across the box and it's a goal kick, happy out. Doesn't get the call though.
Conor Cody, who has Andy Robertson by the face and neck.
Oh, yeah.
Is that who?
Well,
he's
defending.
Yeah, it was Cody. Yeah, it was Cody and Robertson. So there was the split screen on Twitter.
Romantic.
Like Casemiro does this.
Happy Valentine's Day, lads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry,
yeah,
just on a romance.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of a romantic gesture, Casemiro strangling Will Hughes of Crystal Palace, and he gets the straight red in a 3-match ban. And Cody had the hand around the back of Robertson.
You're using
That's
it as
the difference.
Part of the Manchester United persecution complex. Okay, I was thinking more like great scenes in pop culture. Tony Soprano and any one of a number of people who could have been, but
I thought it was quite a romantic moment, and even the little smirk Andy Robertson was laughing at Pickford.
Andy Robertson was having it.
It was quite funny. Seamus Coleman was quite wind up, which you don't see too often. I just thought it was notable.
I don't think Seamus is shy in
he's not shy, but
telling his opponents what he thinks of them.
Yeah.
But Robertson, I think, kind of relishes those situations where he can be.
I'd say you'd hate to play against him.
Messer.
Yeah, he'd be a good teammate, but you'd be like, this is a dose to play against.
He's a great for a second goal, like the breakaway. Iwobi was surrounded.
Are Liverpool back?
We have to hold on here. Liverpool beat a team in the relegation zone last night.
I know, but
I'm not sure.
Nice team.
I'm not sure.
Is this one of those moments where they remember that they're not crap?
It could be a kickstart or something.
It could be a kickstart. I mean, what Jurgen Klopp celebrations afterwards certainly felt like, okay, finally now we're getting going, because he did his now famous 3-pump celebration to the home fans, but with a kind of angered, passionate face on him. There wasn't much smiling, even the maniacal smile that he sometimes does when everything's going wrong. There wasn't even that. But you have to also remember that this Everton side have won a grand total of 2 Premier League games away from home since September 2021. And
So you're
one of
saying
those opponents was Southampton.
It could also be a false dawn.
Well, I just went and I think they would say themselves, we won't get too excited. This is a pretty poor Everton side who are at the very start of a new era. And fair play to Sean Dyche, first 2 games at home to Arsenal and away to Liverpool. 3 points from those 2 games isn't bad. It's funny how, had it been 2 draws, it would have been seen as a massive positive, but yet he has 1 more point from that scenario now. So it's not too bad.
Liverpool go to St James's Park next Saturday.
Yeah.
Like that this isn't the start of a new dawn just yet.
But also,
It's a handy run of fixtures. It's Newcastle away, it's Real Madrid at home, Palace away, Wolves at home, Manchester United at home, Bournemouth away, and then Real Madrid again. So there's 6 games, 2, 4, 6, 7 games that will obviously completely define their season, because if they beat Real Madrid, they're through to the quarterfinals and they'll be up and running and they'll be dangerous. And for them to beat Real Madrid, you think that front 3 will have to have clicked. And Jota comes off the bench last night. The kid in midfield starts to play well.
Yeah.
Suddenly they are starting to feel themselves. And by that stage, is Virgil coming back this season?
Well, yeah, Virgil
the bench last
Virgil
night.
was on the bench last night, and Firmino came off the bench. So there's all these lads returning. Jota, you mentioned, by Cetic, as you say, 18-year-old who is dominating midfield. Like,
hasn't it been such a weird seaing?
no,
No, let me hear me out. Hasn't it been such a weird season that it's not beyond the bounds possibility for Liverpool to get their shit together?
but what will that look like by the end of the season? As in finish, not top 4 though.
No, Champions League semi-final, final.
Oh, sorry, yeah, a run in Europe, yeah, of course. But like, because you're so crap in the league, that gives you a focus on the Champions League. You're like, well, all of a sudden, PSG are the same.
Well,
Like,
are they?
They're crap in the league, and
Are they?
well, they've
they
lost.
lost 3-1 to Monaco, and there's a big falling out with Neymar and Marquinhos.
Have you seen the league on table though?
Yeah, I
So
know.
5 points clear, yeah.
But in
So
terms
they're
of-
not crap at the league.
No, but in terms of form in recent games, they've lost 4 this season. Or sorry, there's 4 this year since the turn of the calendar year. So I don't know.
I really wouldn't rule out Liverpool challenging
including
for
games.
top 4 position in the league. Like, one thing I think that we're regularly overlooking, like, there's so many games left this season because the World Cup break. Like, at this time of year anyway, there still will be loads of games left. We're talking 15 games left. It's a massive amount of
They won't
points that
finish
you can
ahead of
accumulate.
Man United or Newcastle United.
They're only 9 points off top 4, even though they're 9th. It's really doable, like, very doable from this Liverpool side. Then you have Luis Diaz back as well, and some of their better players coming back to form, and Van Dijk being the Van Dijk that we know of, like probably Liverpool's greatest defender in the Premier League era. And then suddenly you have this brilliant side with the brand new, sparkling young fella in midfield who seriously has the passing chops to stand out at the top level of the game, and also loves a tackle, which he relished in the post-match interview alongside Mo Salah, smiling away when the interview asked him, "You love a tackle, don't you?" He's like, "I certainly do. Certainly do." For a guy who's quite slight looking too, kind of like the Gavi Pedri mould of player, that they could have unearthed a serious talent there. I saw him play for the first time on Stevens night away to Aston Villa and was seriously impressed by his two-touch in midfield. And most of those passes are going forward all the time, which is a brave thing to do. Very underrated skill in midfield is to pass it forwards all the time. It's so easy to pass backwards.
Yeah.
That's what those players stand out, and this guy could really have a serious future.
We're getting so carried away here. I had mates text me after the United game at the weekend going, "Oh, United back in the title race," and I'm like, "No,
No, they are.
No, they're not.
I mean, you have to be in title race now. What are you talking about? What's the point?
Arsenal have 2 games in hand over everyone, and if they win those 2 games in
Arsenal
hand,
are being a little bit flaky.
I think it's between Arsenal and City. I don't think United or Newcastle are in that battle realistically.
Well,
Well,
again,
why
United are only
not?
5 points off Arsenal, and there's 15 games left.
Yeah, you've got
United are 5 points off Arsenal. Yeah, but Arsenal have 2 games in hand.
Yeah, but points on the board, Shane.
I know, you know.
The end of the season's points on the board, not in the bag.
One swallow does not make a summer, lads. And
There's been many swallows. The
Many
fact that they
swallows.
won at the weekend without Casemiro, they won at the weekend with, like, on paper, the old Ralph Rangnick team, and they were still able to.
Harry Maguire,
Maguire got the nod.
he did. The two main lads sitting on the bench. You gotta alternate. There's some big games coming up for United. They've got Barcelona on Thursday in the new camp. They've got who do they
That's
have?
this Thursday. It is.
Yeah, this Thursday. So there's big games, and there's Carabao Cup final to contend with this month as well. So that's the weekend after this.
Also, what's an absolutely tantalising fixture this weekend in the Premier League is the other Mersey club, Everton, play Leeds. That is going to be very interesting. 3 p.m. Will Leeds have a manager?
Tantalising, you say.
You could almost call it a 6-pointer.
I'm not into kink shaming here, Colm, but I wouldn't call Everton Leeds in the Premier League at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon tantalising.
Oh, I certainly would, sir. 18th against 17th, 1 point in it.
He's using Valentine's Day words here. He's getting
I
all
would
romantic
certainly
on us.
get excited by that now. Oh yeah, very.
Oh no.
Jesus.
I love a good
Go on,
3 p.m.
finish
fixture. I love a good one. Very excited.
Happy Valentine's Day to you, Colm, and your 3 p.m.
There's nothing wrong with being excited about what's happening.
We're all into different things, and some people
you
are
really know how to show a woman a good time.
Yeah, 3 p.m. kickoffs.
Well, that's Saturday sorted, yeah.
Happy days. Move on there quick.
I'm just letting this linger.
What are we moving on for? I'm happy to elaborate.
Okay.
I have other adjectives to go.
That your kinks are Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs.
I love them, yeah. I love a good one anyway, but this is going to be a great
relegation
one.
6-pointer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
That's what you want, like, and it's going to see the real Sean Dyche stand up. He, like those first 2 games, Arsenal and Liverpool, forget about those. This is where Dyche comes into his own. And also, I want to see if Leeds are going to have a manager by then. What are we now, Tuesday? 4 days out? Could be very interesting. Did you see the latest manager linked with Leeds this morning?
You're trying to move on so quickly here.
I'm moving on and on. I'm embracing this.
It's called filling. Yeah, go on. Yeah. Okay.
Nuno.
Run through the odds there. Like,
Nuno could be the new manager in at Leeds this weekend.
I don't think Nuno would be a good Leeds manager at this stage. I think it would be a regressive step for them. However, there is nobody else available because they keep turning down. There was the ex-Ajax manager was at the ground, and then that didn't happen for whatever reason.
He had a look. The statement was, I had a look around and I've decided to go back to the Netherlands.
Right. And is that a mutual thing?
I don't know, but that's the statement I read.
So Manchester United fans, stories all over the back pages and the front pages. In fairness, it's the same. It is the Telegraph, and they've carried the Telegraph copy on the back of the Independent this morning. Rival United bidders and race to sign up Beckham. Who will David Beckham decide to pitch his lot in with? Will it be Qatar? It could potentially be the Ineos owner. Is he available for anybody and everybody?
Sounds like Beckham doesn't want a bit of any of them. So he's been approached by certainly the Qataris because of his role with the Qatari tourism brand. But sounds like Beckham doesn't want to really get involved. Now, I know Alex Ferguson would have been approached by most of these consortiums as well. But from what I'm reading this morning, Beckham is washing his hands.
If you can get it.
Well, I get they all want to see who's going to be the likely winner of this battle. They don't want to back the wrong horse as such. So I think Beckham's keeping his nose squeaky clean for now. But like, I mean, they probably have to get behind someone.
So how will you feel about money from the Gulf coming to be the saviour of your club and to ratchet you back into relevance?
I think a lot of United fans are hoping Jim Ratcliffe wins this bidding just because he's a fan of the club, actually cares about the results on the pitch. I'm not saying the Qataris wouldn't, but let's be honest, they just want to wash money. Like this is the same as Newcastle fans. There's a lot of Newcastle fans still protesting at matches, and they don't feel good about the fact that the money coming into their club is coming from certain sources. So no, I don't think as a United fan I'd feel.
Is all money not dirty though? Is that like, are we?
Maybe we have a right to be sceptical about everything these days, but it's so directly dirty that it would concern you as a fan. Like I think if it was Villa or any club that anyone out there supports this morning, you wouldn't be too pleased. You'd prefer the money to come in from a less morally questionable source, I think.
Yeah, what do you do? Do you follow another club out of protest?
Nah, so you can't do that either.
I mean, Newcastle fans turn their backs on the Saudis. I'm not sure.
Not
probably quite a low percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, show me a morally straight owner in the club, you know, that's unequivocally a good guy. You know, it's I mean, like, there are better owners for sure, but there's at the very least a ruthlessness to the ascension to own a club. Like, but I don't know. Like, I mean, even the Jack Walker millions in the 90s for Blackburn winning their league, like, they still signed Sutton and Shearer. You know, it's not like.
So the money matters.
The money matters. I mean, like Leicester 2015-16 was probably a pretty good story overall because you had Vardy and Mahrez, who were 2 championship lower league players who came good. That's pretty good, but you know that club had money too. So
well, it's got to the point where every club is doing it. It is like, you know, doping every single athlete in the 100-metre sprint. You know, let's just do it. Let's see how fast the human body can physically go. So let's just dope every single club financially in the world. Like in the Premier League, just give them all. Just let the Qataris take over every single club in the Premier League and see who wins it.
yeah,
You know, pump them full of every player in the world. Like, literally all the best players in world football come to the Premier League.
Well,
and,
it's not far off that at the moment.
Yeah.
So you two are morally ambivalent about this, or are you like, no, this is a bad thing for the club, it's bad for football? What are you actually thinking about?
definitely.
Is there a little bit of excitement about how much money they might spend and how suddenly whatever player you want is going to be available?
Nah. I don't feel good about it at all. In fact, if the Qataris take over Manchester United, like, there's a definite.
They'll still go to Old Trafford though.
I'll still go to Old Trafford, yeah, for sure.
So it won't have any impact.
But this is like the me turning off my bedside light to save the planet. Do you know, we should all be doing that. We should all be doing the little things. But yet I still feel like my little protest and not going to Old Trafford to support the team would not have a significant impact. I know that's not the right attitude. I completely acknowledge that. But I don't think a Qatari consortium taking over at Old Trafford would stop. You can't help the team you support and grew up supporting. Same for Liverpool fans, same for Arsenal fans or Villa fans. You support the team you support, and you're not going to stop supporting them because a group of morally questionable Qatari
Well, you can go to your local club and just...
Monaghan United went bust, unfortunately for me.
Well, but you've moved to Dublin now. You can pick a Dublin team.
Bows are probably, I think, geographically the team I should pick. But no, I just can't. I can't do it. No. I'll still support the team.
It's coming though.
Yeah, it is going to happen. There are American groups interested. Like, Ratcliffe clearly doesn't have the money of the Qataris, but
he's got plenty.
He's got enough money. He is the richest man in Britain.
There'll be people willing to lend him money at a preferable...
Are we rooting out Elon Musk completely?
Yeah, it's all bollocks.
No?
Oh, that's like attention-seeking nonsense.
And then everybody would talk about how the club's about to collapse. Do you remember when everyone thought Twitter was gone?
Ah, yeah.
Look at Elon now.
Remember he sent a card
flying
to space.
Is he flying it?
Oh, he's flying it, yeah. Well, I remember people on Twitter...
Does Twitter still work properly?
About 6 weeks ago were saying, if this thing collapses, you can catch me on this, this and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to go on very quiet now.
I had to switch to recent
Twitter too big to fail. Manchester United too big to fail. Just classic Elon project.
But last week he fired engineers because his own tweets weren't reaching the same number of people as it had been previously. So I don't think it's gone from strength to strength. I think it's like it is teetering on the brink. Their revenue is massively down. And the whole point of the Man United thing is that it's going to get him, all the Man United fans searching for him. That's all that is.
Yeah. Look, either way, like, if you look around at the potential owners of United, it's not much to get very excited about. Like, because like you're asking, is going to make a difference. Like, look,
So
the World Cup went ahead despite all the protests. The World Cup still went ahead and people enjoyed it.
Yeah.
As terrible as that is, right?
So,
and then you're looking at the Glazers for the last decade and a half. United fans hated them.
So
and it was still...
Would you prefer Qatar to the Glazers?
No.
You'd prefer the Glazers to Qatar?
Well, like, I mean, the Glazers are awful for so many reasons, but
rock and a hard place
you can probably stop at a certain point the Glazers when it becomes way beyond sport and they're actually impacting the lives of human beings with nothing to do with it, whereas the Qatari ownership it goes way beyond that. So you don't want to be associated with a regime like that at all. It was exactly the same way we were talking about with the World Cup. It's extremely disappointing that this is probably going to happen.
So you got to be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, but I would say, like a lot of Manchester United supporters would say the same. Like, I don't like. The problem is they'll take over, and then they'll get the checkbook out, and then everybody will forget. Like, football fans are unbelievably fickle. The United-Liverpool game in 2021, the end of that season, April or May, was abandoned, right, because of protests. Big galvanising effort to get the Glazers out of the club. 3 months later, the club signed Cristiano Ronaldo, and everybody forgot about it. Oh, brilliant. The king is back. Jadon Sancho arrived. Raphael Varane. It was like, oh yeah, we don't really like them, but come here. They're signing unbelievable players. The fans go to Old Trafford in their droves. The Glazers are happy out, delighted. Like, you can hate us all you want, but you're still spending money in the club, and that's all that matters for us and our dividends. Be the same thing with the Qataris. People won't really be happy with it, but they're still going to go to Old Trafford. Nothing really changes. Everything stays the same. It's nefarious money either way.
Shifted out pointing out Ineos, the also F1 involved. So, I mean, there's going to be Formula 1 and links to Manchester United with if Jim Ratcliffe comes in. Like, I think if Jim Ratcliffe wins this bidding, I know they have until Friday to send their email and show their interest. This will be the best week for United fans in 15 years. Like, if we got an owner that is not as morally questionable as the Qataris, but also is going to care about the results of the club on the pitch, which the Glazers clearly haven't for a decade and a half, then it's as good as signing 10 unbelievable players for me. Like, this will be some week.
But on the other side, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Shifty lad, good morning everyone. Happy Valentine's Day to you all. I thought it was Pancake Tuesday also, but I'm a week short. Mrs. said she'd make them for me anyway. She's a keeper. Indeed. I also thought it was Pancake Tuesday today, but it turns out it's not.
She's a keeper.
There's only one thing
Tough
that you need to worry about today, and that is what you're doing for Valentine's Day. What are you doing for Valentine's Day, Colm?
What do you do at this stage? You're so long into the marriage. Do you even acknowledge it?
Was that answer a question with a question?
I'm more interested in, well, you're longer in it.
Yeah.
You especially have to acknowledge it then, don't you?
Go on, Colm, what are you...
Well, can you answer?
with nothing. We made an agreement to do nothing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we're getting there now. I think we acknowledge that it's BS, but we still acknowledge it. Yeah.
What do you just say it to each other?
Yeah, come on.
You know what you should do?
Don't go coy now.
John, I did this morning. Thankfully, she never ever watches this, right? So I got up and I left the card at the end of the bed because she wouldn't be awake. So we're at that phase.
Very nice.
Give it another 2 or 3 years now, it'll just be a handshake.
That's pretty romantic.
Best of luck with the day ahead.
Yeah, fist pump.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. The remains of St. Valentine are in the church. Was it Whitefire Church there in Angel Street? Apparently it's the busiest day of the year for couples going in there to have a look at, I think, his heart, or certainly part of his...
Sexy. Let's go and see the calcified remains of a dead guy. Really putting me in the mood there for some necrophilia. What?
Yeah. I know.
The slowing death of romanticism reminds me of a story. My friend told me that his dad got a birthday card for his mother, and it said, "Dear Mary, happy birthday, all the best." From John.
Like a football manager interview. All the best.
They're married for like 40 years. That is love. You don't have to say.
All the best is kind of like, I'm out of here now. We've had enough. The contract's up.
You don't have to express your joy.
Enjoy your day.
Speaking of expressing joy, that Liam Brady documentary last night finally aired after much talk. Do you remember Adrian Barry gave us a great billing, a great little promo of it there on Friday, saying the first minute, because Richie McCormick said on Thursday night on the news round, the first 5 or 6 minutes are outstanding. And we put that to Adrian, and Adrian said, forget that, the first minute is incredible. So I went into this with very high expectations. Literally the first frame of the documentary aired. I was like, this is going to have to live up to the Adrian Barry seal of approval. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was very,
that
very,
first
very
60
good.
seconds is... What a way to get an audience in, like.
Yeah. Sure, we're not spoiling it by talking about it, because a lot of people would have seen it.
But even if they haven't, a lot of people will watch it back. But I think the first 30 seconds, for me anyway, was a Liam Brady that I had never seen before.
I haven't seen it, so it's worth digging out in the player?
100%.
Okay.
I'm only at the end of part 1, by the way. Shane, you've seen the whole thing, but I just watched the first quarter of an hour, and what it seems to manage to capture is three places very important to Liam Brady's life: Dublin, London, and then Italy. And then you're seeing a guy who speaks the Italian language really well. He's just a fascinating character. I'm mad into his music.
Seeing him like chatting with Marco Tardelli at Marco's home in Italy, and then like he's even like he picked up Italian quite quickly. And the first season he's with Juventus, he's like he didn't start the best, and he's hearing the owner speaking Italian up the front saying, "We got the wrong foreigner," and he's like, I understood what he said. And he's talking about Liam Brady, and like ultimately only last 2 seasons at Juventus. I hadn't realised how you can only have one foreign player, and then you could have 2 foreign players, and Platini comes in.
Michel Platini came in 1982, but for his 2 seasons at Juventus, they won the league both years in what was then the best league in the world, really the most competitive. And the first season, he was their top scorer from midfield, with albeit only 8 goals, as he joked about.
Famously, Platini in 82, there's a piece of analysis, I think it might have been half-time, where Dunphy's like, this Platini, he's no good, he's a spoofer. And then he scores a perfect hat-trick in the second half. Left foot, right foot header, and that's the Platini who's like best player in the world, who then obviously Maradona probably better than him, but who moves to replace him. So that's the level that he's being replaced at. But anyway, we got to go. 7:53 this morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you. We're going to delve deep into the Ashburn Cup controversy that happened at the weekend with the captain and manager of UL, who thought they were all set for the semi-final, only for them to be replaced by DCU at the last moment in a very controversial fashion. We have Gareth Roberts and Patrick Boyland for the Liverpool and Everton side of things after last night's Merseyside derby. We'll talk with JD around about 8:35 this morning. Spurs and Champions League action this evening. Derek McNamara is going to join us in studio at 8:45 to look back on the stats from the Ireland-France game, which is now universally being hailed as one of the all-time great rugby matches. Jonny Cooper is going to join us at 9:10, and Philippe Auclair will play out with some Philippe goodness from the show last night. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp. Eddie Hearn in Dublin last night, interviewed by Paula Flynn at the airport, confirmed that Katie Taylor's rematch with Amanda Serrano, that in Croke Park, is not even on the agenda, really. It sounds like he had a nice pint of sponsored stout or a glass of sponsored whiskey, and nothing seems to have come from it.
No. Is there any, do we know even why they were having the chats and meeting up? I know
because a Twitter offer gets made, you got to show up and follow through.
Yeah, but it all leaves a bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it? The whole thing. None of them are really ruling out Croke Park after all this. Like the 3 arena fight's going to happen, but nobody's really ruling out Croker. Yeah, I still think it has to happen. Everyone's like, oh no, she's fighting on Irish soil. That's all that matters.
He did say an interesting thing about she might never fight anywhere else again. I wonder how many fights she has left. Is the other thing. Like, it's obviously up to Katie Taylor, but like she's made all the things that she needed to do. So boxing is definitely it's a dangerous sport. So you kind of want her to get out.
Yeah. Well, she's ahead of it
as well as possible.
Yeah.
And so look, it's a double-edged sword. You want people to see her fight here as well, and a fight in September in Croker. The weather's generally good in September. Like, think back to most of the All-Ireland finals, with the exception of the Kerry Dublin one, which was obviously terrible. You can put a roof on the
championship is over. They've got time and space to do it, as Peter McKenna said recently. So yeah.
All right, give us your thoughts on the Katie Taylor situation. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You need to be subscribed to our YouTube channel to be able to leave a comment. So youtube.com/offtheball, hit subscribe and leave your comments, and we'll get to them in a few minutes' time. Now, we are turning our attention to Camogie, and I'm delighted to say Siobhan McGrath, the captain of UL, and Ruairi Walsh, the manager of UL, are with us this morning to talk to us about what should have been an interesting Ashburn Cup semi-final weekend for them, but in the end wasn't. Siobhan, you guys ended up going to the Ashburn Cup anyway and showing up in your gear. What was the response that you got from people on the ground when you were there who were aware of your situation?
Yeah, geez, firstly, would like to congratulate TUD. I think they're getting lost in all of this. It was their first Ashburn to win, so we'd like to actually just say congratulations to them first. But we were kind of probably blown away with the support we got from everyone. I suppose that heard about our situation, but I suppose the most disappointing thing is we got up there and no one from the CCO would engage with us. No one came up to us from the CCO, which that was probably the most disappointing thing of it all when we got up there. So yeah, even though we got great support, they still stayed silent over the whole thing.
So sorry, just for people who are coming to this and learning all the new acronyms, what's the CCO?
So the CCO is, I suppose, it's the committee over the whole college camogie.
Right.
So that's who they are. So they run all the college competitions. Okay.
Ruairi, good morning to you.
Morning.
Can you... a lot of people are coming to this story late. They might have seen a little bit on the telly at the weekend with Ursula Jacob and Don Lowe talking about it. So can you bring us right back to the very start of this? The Ashburn Cup is obviously... the final was on at the weekend, and it's a semi-final weekend, so semi-finals and final were on, and 4 teams were qualifying. How does the qualifying process actually work for that?
Yeah, so Ger, it's straightforward. There's 2 groups of 4, and the top 2 teams qualify from each group. So in our group, it kind of transpired there were 3 very even teams: TUD, ourselves, and DCU. So with 1 game to go, we realised that if we won our game against Maynooth, we would be in a 3-way tie effectively, and score difference would be vital.
Okay, so it's very straightforward. 4 teams in a group, 3 good teams, and Maynooth, who obviously didn't have a very strong team this year for whatever reason. And at that stage, heading into the final round, so this is back in November, is it?
No, first round was in November.
Right, first round was in November.
And, yeah, final round was just January 31st, so not long ago. Actually, 2 weeks before from today.
And you play everybody just once, so it's 3 games, is it?
Yep. And so going into the last game, we saw a clarification as to exactly what the score difference situation was. A table had been published socially online and through CCAO, so we wanted to confirm that was, precise and exact before we played our game. So we were assured that if we won by 33 points, we would qualify.
And as a matter of interest, right, just in the interest of fairness, did you guys get that in writing from the CCO?
Yeah, it was sent out, and DCU got it as well. They were presented with 5 scenarios. What would happen if Maynooth won the game? What would happen if it was a draw? What would happen if we won by 1 to 32 points? What would happen if we won by 33 to, I think it was 51? And if we won by 52 points, we'd have pipped TUD at the top of the group. So that was kind of, a non-runner. But so we really targeted the 33 points, and straight after the game, remarkably, we won by 34, and straight after the game, we were congratulated in person by a representative from the executive that was there. Then very quickly on social media, and the next morning we got an official invitation and congratulations from the CCAO to the Ashburn weekend.
Okay, so Siobhan, that's a big deal. Can you put in context what the Ashburn means for players? Like, I was watching the Anne Dalton documentary on TG Card this week, and like Anne's career is obviously one of the all-time greats, but she's flicking through the books, and the Ashburn Cup weekends are clearly very important to her and her career, notwithstanding everything she's won and how iconic she is in the sport. So this is not something that's small for you guys. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your team and the level of intensity and effort that you guys have made around this competition this year?
Yeah, it's been massive, to be honest. Like Ashburn, I think everyone would agree that's played it. It's just, I'd say it's like a fraction below inter-county the standard, to be honest, because you're playing with and you're playing against inter-county players, do you know? So like our commitment to this competition, like everyone that's has any sort of interest in camogie knows that UL have such a strong tradition in Ashburn in the first place. And like we've been training since, I think Ruairi probably has this better now, but I think it was September when we started back doing trials and different things like that. So like when we won that match against Maynooth, like we were just absolutely like over the moon, because like we saw clarification that we were through, and we were just so excited because like Ashburn weekend, I think I said this to someone before, that it's kind of like Fela, you know, the way Fela used to be, like, you know, the mini weekend, like you go up for the weekend with you the closest people that you've become best friends with the people on the team, and like, you know, it's just devastating then when you get told a few days beforehand that you're out. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just hard to even put into words like what's happened here, to be honest.
And Rory, just to clarify then, after you beat Maynooth by 34 points, you're congratulated on qualifying for the semi-finals. And what happens next? At what point do you realise that, no, in fact, you haven't qualified?
So that game was on Tuesday, the 31st of January. And by the Thursday, we had heard that there was discontent and the score difference was being questioned. So I think there was a Zoom set up between our development officer, DCU's development officer, and the chairperson of the CCAO. So we were told at the time that human error was involved. So we thought about it, we chatted amongst management, and we decided that if human error was involved, it was going to be unfair on DCU if they were going to miss out if it was an error was made with score difference. So we offered at that meeting a playoff, which was rejected, which was their right, I presume. They wanted it to go to the board, as we were told. So we saw clarification as to which board. We asked questions which weren't answered as to what's exactly happening. Or are they investigating the whole group? Or are they just investigating that one game that was played in November between DCU and Maynooth on the 29th of November? That's the one DCU were questioning the score that was sent in for.
As a matter of interest, when you say replay was rejected, do you know who rejected the replay? Or the playoff?
Look, I wasn't in at that meeting, but I know that we offered a playoff. But
right, that was deemed unacceptable by somebody, because it seems like it would have been obviously the right thing to do in this instance. As a matter of interest, what was the score difference? Like how significant was the human error? Are we led to believe?
We're led to believe it's a 3-point difference.
Right, so you would have needed to score 2 more points.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, but you would have known what to do, and you might have.
Yeah, we would have been aware. We would have been aware of it, and even like in the last 10 minutes, we reached a point. I think it was 13 minutes left. We were on plus 31. So when we reached 33 points, we kind of knew if we don't concede a goal now, we're going to be through. So kind of the mind frame switches a bit. You're dropping your centre back, you know, in front of the full back line, just making sure you don't concede a goal and you're through. So
yeah.
So it seems to have been an issue in the referee's report. Is that the case, Rory?
See, I'm not sure what happened exactly yet because we haven't received any answers. But yeah, that's what we're led to believe. There was a discrepancy between what the referee said originally and what DCU sent in. And then the referee clarified his score the day after we played Maynooth.
What's bonkers to me completely here is the communication and transparency, or lack thereof, in a lot of ways. Is that why this has reached the point now where this story is gaining traction? Because it strikes me, looking from the outside in, that the communication, for whatever reason here, hasn't been maybe what it should have been.
Yeah, well, first of all, as well, like when when we found out on Wednesday morning last week, 9:19, we got an email. I have it here. It's 2 lines. Where is it? Sorry, 1 second. So the committee confirms that the result of the DCU-D versus MU game played on 29th of November is as confirmed by the referees. DCU 620 to MU 4 points. As a result, DCU will advance to the semi-final of the Ashburn Cup. So that was it. No mention of UL, no mention of anything else. So I just thought that was the only information we had officially. And as of yet, that's still the only information we've received. So we don't know how this mix-up happened. We don't know how they came to the conclusion that, us being given official wrong information didn't matter going into our last game. And even every time we appealed, we just didn't get anywhere with an appeal. So we still have no hearing yet. In
retrospect, is there any way that you could have gone to the DRA in all this? Did you need to make a bigger stink now last week? I don't want to in any way blame you for anything, but you do what you think you can do, and then it turns out they're saying, no, sorry, that's not enough, and away with you now.
Yeah, so on Thursday morning, so we kind of gave ourselves time to try and get as much information as possible, because when you have to appeal to a rule. But as I read out there was no rule quoted as to how DCU were going through. They didn't quote Rule 7.5 referees' reports. There was no rule quoted. So we were trying to stab at the dark, because you're not allowed to send in appeal without appealing a rule. First of all, actually, we asked clarification. Did DCU actually officially appeal? And we were told they didn't, that they queried and questioned. So I don't know how they got to the THDC without an official appeal sent in. But look, that's another issue as well.
Yeah.
So we saw clarification of that too. But we were stabbing in the dark, so we sent in an appeal kind of based on the referee report and home college sending in the score, but all we were told was it was rejected. So then we only got word on that at 11:30 on Thursday night. So we were left then Friday morning, basically within 24 hours of the Ashburn Cup. We made contact with the DRA, and they were told that they just would not be able to get an initial hearing in between then and semi-final. So we were in a desperate situation then, because still trying to go down official channels. We had basically nowhere to go to try and get the game postponed, really, to give us time to, figure out how we could go about, getting a hearing for the girls. The one thing, every time we met the players, be it at training, and they're asking what's going on, and you're actually looking them in the eye, and you actually have no answers for them. And we're saying, we'll find out for you. We'll get answers. As of yet, we haven't been able to get one answer. So we made contact with the CCAO, and they told us to send in another appeal that it'll be considered. So we sent in another appeal on Friday evening, and that was just, again, at 11:30 we got an email basically saying that appeal was not being looked at because we already had one rejected. So I don't know why they gave us information that we could send in another appeal when they just noted it and threw it out straight away.
Siobhan, the talk of amalgamation between the Camogie Association and the GA and the LGFA has probably ratcheted up in the last year or two, but certainly incidents like this probably only serve to highlight the need for the Camogie Association and the GA and the LGFA to become one.
Yeah, it definitely does. I suppose the CCAO are, at the end of the day, ruled by the Camogie Association. So you'd have to question the Camogie Association in terms of, are they properly, I suppose, getting the right people involved? Obviously, we know everyone's a volunteer here. No one's getting paid. They're doing this off their own time. But you'd have to wonder how well it's actually governed when things like this happen. So you'd imagine if it was all under the one thing that, well, you'd hope these things wouldn't happen again. But I don't know. It's hard to know how we can come into, I suppose, one organisation when this sort of thing happens. I suppose looking from the hurling point of view and the GA's point of view, you'd wonder why you'd want to, I suppose, all come under the one umbrella when you're listening to these sort of controversies, I suppose.
And when you guys found out that you weren't going to be able to go, Siobhan, what was the atmosphere like at that point? What was the response from the players?
Oh, it was just devastation, to be honest. I think we woke up to Ruairi's message the following morning, and we were actually just couldn't believe that it could end over a text message, if you get me. We're all involved in top level sport, and we understand there's highs and there's lows, but you expect to be knocked out of a competition on the pitch. Like, you know, you never expect for this all to be dragged out, and that you get a text message one morning you're looking forward to the weekend and you're getting ready. Next morning you wake up and you're getting a text message actually saying, no, you're out. Like, it was just, everyone was just awful upset. Like, and as well, I suppose the special thing with college camogie is you only get like 4 years to play together. And like, this is a lot of our last year in college. So like, the fact that our college camogie career just ended one morning over text, it was just absolutely, it's just crazy, to be honest. You can't even believe that it could get to this stage.
And what's your recollection of the last 10 minutes when you kind of knew the scoring difference had been reached on the field?
Yeah, I remember, I suppose Ruairi had said to us, you know, don't be counting it up, just play the game as if it was a normal game. But when we had got to the score that we needed, to the 33 points, to be honest, like, we did kind of sit back and just kind of said to ourselves, okay, don't let them score again, because we'd reached the point. So like, we were just kind of making sure that we stayed at the 33 points. Like, but like, when we got to that, then we were like, the final whistle, we were just absolutely delighted. Like, and I suppose if you were to take it out of context, you'd be like, why are they celebrating so much a group match? But like, we were absolutely over the moon, and you know, we were all chatting away after the match on about the weekend and stuff, and then like, you go from that to then a few days later being told you're actually out of it. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah,
and I guess, Rory, the worst part about this is like, it's gone now. The weekend has happened, the semi-finals and final have happened, and there's actually nothing that's going to give you guys a sense of justice in this.
Yeah, well, like, we're just saying, and we spoke to the players again and said, like, this isn't over from our point of view. We're not going to stop until we get the answers the players seek. Like, they have 3 questions that were put up on social media that still haven't been answered. And if it means the next team that comes through next year, well, whatever college it is, that this will never happen to another team again, is probably our aim from now on. Unfortunately for us, it seems like that, as Siobhan said, that was the end of the road for the team, and to happen in such circumstances is appalling. So we're just hoping that it won't happen. If we can find out exactly what happened and make it public as to what went on, you know, we might be able to save another team, be it college or county or the next team that has an issue with the Camogie Association from, you know, ending up like we did maybe. Just as well, Ger, I think the saddest part of the whole thing was after the semi-final and we were up, and as you might have seen, the girls did a dignified protest, not out of respect for the 2 teams that were playing at the time, UCC and DC, out of respect for the players. But when that final whistle went at the end of extra time and we were walking back to the bus, I think it kind of dawned, you could just see like heads dropping, and they realised like that the semi-final was over, that they thought they'd all be playing in. And, you know, for me, like, that was probably the kind of the heartbreaking moment of the whole thing, that was it, like, that was the final chance for them, basically.
The thing is, Rory, if this happened in a Division 3 under 10 football match, you'd be shocked that the wrong score was sent in to the county board. But this is like the Premier 3rd level competition. It's not even the 2nd division of it, it's the top division. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And the funny thing as well, like with the Ashbourne Cup, is, as we were saying, it's held in such prestige, and the amount of effort that players are putting in. Like, we have girls then who are on college placements. One girl this week is getting buses up and down from Waterford for training after she was on her work placement. You know, this is the kind of efforts that they're coming in. And then to see like the standards they set and ask of each other, to see them let down by standards elsewhere, you know, is, you know, it's gut-wrenching, really.
Well, listen, thanks to both of you for making the time, for sharing your story and doing it so well this morning. Siobhan McGrath, joint captain of UL, and Rory Walsh, the manager of the UL Camogie team in the Ashbourne Cup. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Ger. Thanks, Shane.
We will, of course, ask the CCAO for comment on this and try and get to the very bottom of what happened. But, like, you know, unfortunately, there's not going to be any restorative justice for them.
Yeah, and like, even Ruairi was saying that they want the answers to those 3 questions, and like, as in, what was in the referee's report, what was the timing of it, when was it submitted, all that sort of stuff needs to come out. Like, as Ruairi said, there's nothing they can do about it now. But if they can stop this ever happening again, as you say, in the top tier college competition, which is ridiculous, makes a farce of the whole competition. So,
right, 14 minutes past 8 this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We're going to be talking about the Merseyside derby in just a moment. Braeburn Coffee, though, is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee coming to an Applegreen store near you, with new Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. And follow us on social for your opportunity to win €100 of Braeburn goodness. Up next, Gareth Roberts and Patrick Boyland on the Merseyside derby. But here is Philippe Auclair speaking with Joe about Pep Guardiola last night.
One of the things which surprised me is that I can understand that he would come up in defense of his club and saying, oh, many people are finding us guilty before the panel has deliberated, then a verdict has been reached. But that's not what he said. He actually said things like, we've been proved innocent at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is simply untrue.
Yes.
That's not the case. It was thrown out because of the statute of limitations.
Yeah,
Everybody knows that.
And that's what I find so interesting about his position, because, he must know that, because everybody knows that. That's a kind of the most infamous aspect of that cast ruling. So he must know that. And even just there's what the hierarchy have told him, but he must have read about the Mancini arrangement, for instance, in Der Spiegel.
Yes.
And he must think to himself, I mean, it has been quite the decade at Man City. There's been a lot of money. I just want,
Yes.
maybe, but like, and that's where I felt his head was in May of 22. That was a very reasonable, under the circumstances, response on his part. I thought that I've sought assurances, I trust these people, and they've given me assurances. If they're lying to me, I've told them we're done. And I thought that, you know what, it's not perfection, but it's not a bad way of handling those questions. So I don't know what's happened in the last 8-9 months, but that it just how no one in his world is saying, well, tread softly here. It's not beyond the bounds.
Watch OTB AM live every weekday morning from 7:30 on YouTube. Just subscribe to the Off the Ball channel so you don't miss a thing. OTB GAA.
Well, it was wide, everybody. I don't know how many thousand people were here today, but I'd say every one of them thought it was wide except the umpire. But anyway, so look, that's what happens when you're away grounds. You don't tend to get breaks.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
A bit of a topsy-turvy Merseyside derby last night, but a victory for Liverpool in the end. They beat Everton by 2-0. I'm delighted to say broadcaster Gareth Roberts and Patrick Boyland from The Athletic are with us now. Gareth, I might start with you. The swings of a season on a single moment as the ball comes back off the upright and Liverpool sweep the length of the pitch to score a goal. It's mad how an entire season can sometimes be distilled into 12-14 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we were all wary of Everton's threats on set pieces, particularly with the added sprinkle of Dyche. And so, in that moment, I think hearts were in mouths. But as you say, Liverpool 13, 14 seconds later are up the other end of the pitch. They put it in the back of the net and then they're on the way. And I thought once Liverpool scored, I thought you really saw the confidence come back. I mean, there's clearly been an issue with that. There's been a bit of a mental block, I think, with the players this season. I think sort of starting the season in the manner that they did and sort of the title disappearing into the distance so quickly has affected them mentally. But hopefully this is a bit of a chink of light. It was huge for Liverpool, this. I mean, as usual, people are playing it down online because there's always a Grinch online to tell you shouldn't enjoy yourself around football. But I certainly did. I thought, this is a vital period for Liverpool now. If we'd have been beaten last night, heads would have been down. You could see everything falling apart and Liverpool falling into, a pit of crap season, if you like. But they've got one hand on the rung and they can start to pull themselves up now, hopefully.
Yeah, Patrick, that it was on the verge of being a Sean Dyche masterclass where the team is not the best team in the game. Score a header from a corner kick like that and away you go. But such fine margins, and I guess it just goes to show how fragile Everton are at the moment.
Yeah, it does. Obviously, it was kind of, I suppose, a minute that epitomised Everton and Merseyside derbies, but probably particularly so at Anfield. Whatever can go wrong does tend to go wrong. So when that ball rebounds, it doesn't just rebound, but there's also a kind of a Liverpool deflection that springs the counter for them. One of the things that occurred to me more or less straight away is obviously Liverpool break really quickly, and that's their preferred method of attacking the opposition goal. But just how athletic they were compared to Everton. So effectively it became a foot race between Darwin Núñez, Cody Gakpo and Mohamed Salah, V on the Everton side, Dwight McNeil, a 33-year-old Idrissa Gueye, and an ageing Seamus Coleman. And from that point on, there was only going to be one winner in the game. The irony for Everton is that I think actually after a very shaky start, they'd settled into the game a little bit in that period. They'd started to build attacks. They'd won a few corners, and obviously came closest to breaking the deadlock and opening the scoring. But the higher Everton seemed to push, the more it played into Liverpool's hands. And as Gareth says, from the moment Liverpool gained that ascendancy, I don't think there was any doubt as to who was going to win the game.
I think, Patrick, Sean Dyche described Jordan Pickford's decision as a bit of a misread after the match, which would be a bit of an understatement, I think. He really just said to Mo Salah, here's the goal, just help yourself.
Yeah, it was bizarre, wasn't it? It was almost looking like he was scrambling to compensate for other people's errors, but had made the wrong decision in the split second. I mean, if that was a misread, as Sean Dyche puts it, then I think there were 4 or 5 in the build-up. I'm not entirely sure why Seamus Coleman doesn't bring the Liverpool man down on the edge of the Liverpool box. Idrissa Gueye loses the foot race with Darwin Núñez, but he's probably always going to lose that particular battle. And then again, I'm not sure what Vitaly Mykolenko is doing in the middle of the penalty area, leaving 3 Liverpool players free. It kind of felt like there was a catalogue of errors that made Jordan Pickford do something mad, and that's not excusing what Pickford did, but it is to say that it's on more than just him. And even if you look at the second goal, Connor Cody leaving the ball somewhat inexplicably after a deflection on the cross. Everton were their own worst enemies last night. I think they played into Liverpool's hands, but they were guilty of squandering the ball in such dangerous positions time after time, and not always because of kind of like a fierce Liverpool press. I think it counted 3 times that James Tarkowski just gave the ball straight to Liverpool and started attacks, and it was kind of exactly what Liverpool needed to get back into their groove, and obviously they did that. I thought they played very well on the night.
Gareth, Patrick mentioned their fierce Liverpool press. There was an element of a lot of that we haven't seen from Liverpool in recent months, and all of a sudden it was there last night. One name that probably stands out for a lot of people is Stefan Bajcetic in the middle of the park, 18 years of age. I mean, he really put his hand up, not just last night but in recent games, as the player who's almost leading the way in many ways.
Yeah, which is mad, isn't it? I mean, I think he said himself in an interview after the game that, it's not very long ago he was playing youth football, and now he's sort of the star man at Anfield in a Merseyside derby. And I have to be honest, I've been impressed by him, but I was a little bit worried. Everton have got physicality in the middle of the park, and I thought maybe he'd be muscled out of this game a little bit. I think Everton tried that early on. There was a few sort of challenges in on him, which, to sort of test his mettle, if you like, but he came through that. He emerged and he played his own game, and I thought he was playing some fantastic passes. He was getting stuck in. And there was actually a chance towards the end where I thought it opened up for him. And, I was getting sort of shades of Steven Gerrard. I just thought, put your foot through that. If that hits the back of the net, the roof's going to come off. But he decided to play the pass. I think there's plenty of time to come from him, isn't there? 18 years old, putting in a performance like that is really positive. And look, there was a bit of a sort of, a narrative around the game. I was listening to a lot of the build-up media and stuff in the day before the game. And there was a lot of stuff about that, about, Liverpool a soft touch. Liverpool can be got out in the middle of the park. Everton are sort of, dogs of war rebooted under Sean Dyche, and this is going to be their day. So I think there was a huge pressure on Liverpool, huge pressure on an 18-year-old lad playing in the middle of the park. And, he passed that test with flying colours.
The thing is, that build-up all seemed true, Gareth, over the last month. I think this is their first win of the calendar year. Liverpool were kind of in a situation where you could almost make any statement about them stick, because it had been so chaotic, so disorganised, so out of character. So that, look, you can't say this is going to turn the whole season around, but certainly the front three played well as a unit. There's some strength in depth coming back in terms of players on the bench last night. Jota gets some game time, and all of a sudden things start to look a little bit better.
Yeah, loads of positives, as you say there. I mean, to see Jota coming off the bench, Firmino coming off the bench, Van Dijk being on the bench, all of those things fantastic for Liverpool, obviously. And then, seeing a performance from Jordan Henderson again. He's looked a little sharp when he's been involved. He's not got the minutes in this season, and we've missed them. And I thought he put a decent performance in last night as well. I enjoyed when he closed down Pickford and put in a tackle. I think at that particular moment that lifted the crowd. And, that's what you need in Merseyside derbies, little moments like that, little sort of, signals of effort from the players. And I thought everything was right. You're right to say that there's so many stories about Liverpool in the last few weeks that have been right. And Jurgen himself has talked about body language, has talked about not winning your challenges, not winning your battles. I thought he did all of that last night. And, I enjoyed him as well. I thought there was a lot of honesty from Jurgen post-match. He said he was relieved. He knew the pressure was on a little bit. He was even talking at one point there in his post-match interview about taking his clothes off. And, I think we all felt like that a little bit. This was absolutely vital. And you're right to say, it's only one game. It's only 3 points. But there's just that little chink of light now. Can Liverpool now take that on, go to Newcastle, get a result there? All of a sudden, it would have seemed mad almost a week or so ago to say they can still get top 4. Now you look like slightly less crazy and saying, well, it's a possibility at least.
What about the Dyche era? What are you hearing from around the club and just in terms of what the team is going to look like? Because obviously 2 massive games to start with. The team who've been the best team in the country, first day out, and then a Merseyside derby second day out. So it's too early to draw any conclusions, but what are the early indications from around the club about how things are working out for him, Patrick?
Yeah, they've largely been positive, to be honest. I think he came in and it was almost like a breath of fresh air, and so far as he was simplifying messaging, trying to get the players to focus on kind of their success, their history over an extended period of time as individuals to get where they are now. Lots of positive messaging. Obviously, a spectacular opening game where they not only beat Arsenal but thoroughly deserved to beat Arsenal. The side that you think will probably go on and win the league. So a lot of the early signs have been positive. Certainly the fans have warmed to his kind of no-nonsense style and his straight talking. Last night felt like a bit of regression. It felt more like a Lampard performance than a Sean Dyche performance. And what I mean by that was that Everton just looked fragile, particularly in transition. They looked fragile, but also on the ball, they were ponderous and lacking in energy. I just thought it was a limp performance all round from Everton. So it was a bit of regression. But I think there's an acceptance from the fan base that Dyche is coming at this from a very low bar. He's inheriting a group of players that are flawed. There are obvious, serious deficiencies in the squad. And we saw that last night with Calvert-Lewin being substituted out of the starting lineup for a 22-year-old in Ellis Sims. A pretty thankless task for him in an away derby at Anfield. So this is going to be a kind of a steady thing that needs to build over time. Dyche doesn't have loads of time to get it right, but he needs to do the best he can with this group of players. And I think, to be honest, if you asked Dyche and if you'd asked Everton before these 2 games and said, would you take 3 points from Arsenal and Liverpool? The answer probably would have been a resounding yes. However disappointing last night's game was. The big challenge now is Everton have tended to fare okay against the big teams this season. They've tended to grind out results and have a structure off the ball that's conducive to limiting the best teams in the league. Where they've really fallen short is in imposing themselves on weaker opposition, on dictating play and carving out chances. There's an obvious lack of creativity in the side, but there's an obvious lack of goals too, which is why they're down towards the bottom end of the league for goals scored. The run coming up is pivotal. You've got Leeds on Saturday, which is kind of your perennial cliched 6-pointer in the relegation battle. Then it's Aston Villa at home the weekend after. And then I think you've got a trip to Arsenal followed by a trip to Nottingham Forest. That feels like a really decisive period in Everton's season. If they were to get 2 or 3 wins from that run, then you probably look at it and think they're going to be okay. They've got enough points on the board just to drag themselves over the line here. But if they were to lose to Leeds and Aston Villa, certainly, then I think you are starting to stare down the barrel. So it's all on this next run for me. It's all on this next 4 or 5. On how Dyche can get these players to respond to what was a serious disappointment last night.
think you mentioned no nonsense approach there, Patrick, from Dyche, and Alex Iwobi was speaking after the Arsenal win and saying he couldn't move off the couch after the game. He was so wrecked tired. I think they ran more in that game than they had at any point under Frank Lampard's tenure, which speaks volumes. He's banned snoods and hats and training and all this sort of classic Dyche-isms, but clearly the players will respond to that. You know, that no nonsense approach is something that clearly Burnley players responded to. So why not Everton?
Yeah, I think it's seen as a bit retrograde on the outside, and I do understand why. What you've got to do, I think, in the modern game in particular, is explain why you're doing things to these players. You need to tell the players, I'm doing this for reason X. And in the case of the snoods and the long socks and the shin pads in training, the logic from Dyche's side is that these are the things that you play with in the game. You wear long socks, you wear shin pads. You need to train as you're going to play in a match. So that kind of makes sense, and I think the players have bought into that. Insofar as the running goes, I think the league average before the Arsenal game is about 109 kilometres as a collective. They were up at 116 against Arsenal, so obviously that's a marked improvement. Dyche wants that kind of strong running, and that kind of, I think he presses higher, particularly at home, than a lot of people give him credit for. So there have been notable deviations already from what Lampard did and Lampard's kind of preferred style. He wanted to make Everton fundamentally more progressive as a side, particularly in possession. But the game against Liverpool did feel like they'd lapsed back into a lot of those bad habits, kind of leaving players isolated against the pace of Salah and Gakpo on the break. Like I say, it felt like it played into Liverpool's hands, and that's probably more on that group of players than Sean Dyche. I think he just probably needs a little bit longer to completely embed his methods at the football club.
Gareth, the other big story yesterday came from the independent group looking at the handling of the Champions League final, and they've laid the blame squarely at the door of UEFA, which I think any of us who were there at the time understood fully that there was a lot of responsibility, and it certainly wasn't the fans who were just trying to go about their business to get to the game. What was the response from Liverpool fans that you were speaking to yesterday about the report? What did you make of the report?
I mean, first of all, I think it's worth saying that it's shambolic how it's come out. For it to take this long and then for it to come out via leaks to the media and a copy not even arrive on the doorstep of Liverpool Football Club says an awful lot about the shambles that remains around UEFA. It comes as no surprise, I think, to Liverpool fans. We know that our own were not at fault for what happened out in Paris, and as the report itself says, it's in fact the actions of Liverpool fans that prevented it from being much worse. And you say everyone who was there knows what unfolded and knows what happened, but I'm still seeing people who trotted out mistruths on the day who were yet to apologise. I'm thinking about Jake Humphries on BT Sport and things like that. He was very quick to talk about the actions of the fans on that night, and we get to hear him say he got that wrong, despite the report now landing on the table. So, yeah, it's. I think what's important now is what happens next. So, UEFA seems to be run like a corner shop when it's supposed to be, at the top of European football, organising huge events, and it's good to hear them called out, but I would still worry. There are plenty of Liverpool fans, by the way, who say, and they mean it, they wouldn't go again. They don't want to go to a showpiece event organised by UEFA because they don't trust them to get it right. Now that's what they need to build, that trust. They need to tell us and football in general, well, what are you going to do different next time there's a final?
Remarkable that no one lost their life. The words near miss, and that's used in terms of a potential catastrophic loss of human life. I think, again, you don't really want to think about how bad it might have been, but you actually have to, otherwise they might repeat the same issues. This could happen again in Istanbul this year. Like, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I saw it in the eyes of people who were there when they returned back to Liverpool. I didn't go myself. I actually had my son who really wanted to go. And, I'm delighted, obviously, with hindsight that we didn't go. But people who've come back said things like, like I said already, they don't want to go again. They don't trust UEFA. A lot of people sort of felt almost, they fell out of love with football a little bit because of that night, because of those incidents. And it a lot of times passed, and I'm cynical about sort of when that's come out. It stinks of sort of trying to hide some news behind a big football match that it comes out when it does. And yet UEFA have got a lot to prove to football, that they're going to learn from this and they're going to make changes for this. But it's good to know, and it's good to see that Liverpool, it's been put out there publicly once again that this is not down to Liverpool fans. And look, you only have to get, again, I always talk about the internet because people bat it off, but it is important and it is part of society. And that news breaks last night, and some of the first comments this is ignoring who it is again. This is ignoring that it's Liverpool fans. So there's plenty of people still out there trying to trot a narrative around Liverpool fans somehow being at fault, which is sad. Hopefully stuff like this helps to change that.
Yeah. All right. We got to leave it there. I guess before we finish up here, though, Gareth, you're definitely feeling like, the season is back alive again all of a sudden. It's amazing what one result will do.
100%, yeah. And, I said before, Newcastle at the weekend, we've got Real Madrid after that and Crystal Palace away after that. I always thought this 12-day period would be massive for Liverpool's season. Hopefully now they can get it back on track.
Gareth Roberts and Patrick Boyland, thanks a million, folks. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's our review of the Merseyside derby last night, which finished 2-0. That trio up front, playing well, looking good, making chances for each other, scoring. It's handy when they're two tap-ins.
Playing high wide as well. Those two high wide, and then the striker in the middle kind of holding back a little bit. It was like a Liverpool of old. They actually looked not just in shape but in pressing as well last night, like the Liverpool team that have been in years gone by. Now, look, we've spoken about Everton's record at Anfield. It's not good at all, so has to be taken with a relative pinch of salt. But if they can back it up by beating Newcastle at St James's Park, Liverpool firmly are back. So positives for Nunez, positives for Gakpo. Salah looked more like himself last night, even Jordan Henderson as well. So a lot of positives for Liverpool fans to take. They should be feeling in a pretty good mood this morning, I think.
It is 8:36. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can get us at Off The Ball AM on Twitter. You can get us on YouTube, youtube.com/offtheball for the live stream. Or of course, if you want to text us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Loads of comments coming through, which I'll get to in just a second. Everton have a huge looking team but have no physicality or intensity at all, says Quirky 1980. Salah, Nunez bullied everyone around them. Salah's core strength is such a handful. Antoine Dupont-esque.
Turns out Salah's good at football. We just forgot, because he hasn't, that little bended goal into the far corner. Haven't seen it too often, but he looked brilliant last night. Just quicker, more focused. Maybe
I think it's important that Andy Robinson was being a bit of a dick last night as well, because he needed to feel himself.
Yeah.
And like that's what you want.
Well, it has to feel like a derby. And
he's definitely like when he's on it, everybody, the opposition always hates him, and that's exactly what you need in your team.
But sorry, derbies need to feel like, see the United Leeds game at the weekend. The hatred in the stands, like every time a United player had a goal, a goal kick or a throw in. But like you want to see that. You don't want to hear some of the chants that were chanted by both sets of fans, but you want to see the hatred. And David De Gea giving it loads after Garnacho scored last night. Coleman and all the Liverpool players giving it loads. So a derby needs to feel like that.
It mattered for sure. Paul Mallon says Virgil van Dijk wasn't very good this season before his injury. Liverpool also haven't been that bad at home this year. Away from home seems to be the issue. You'd still have to think they will come good. It's the away from home and how it's going to go in the Champions League. That's all that's important. At 8:38 though, John Duggan is with us. John.
Ger and Shane, how is the form?
How are you doing?
Not bad, thanks.
Champions League tonight?
Yeah, and Tottenham in a real flux with injuries. So Bentancur out for the rest of the season. Sessegnon's injured, Bassuma's injured, Lloris is injured. You probably have Sarr and Skip in the middle of the park this evening. It probably helps that Serie A is not as good as it was in terms of a league. But Tottenham's problem is inconsistency. Antonio Conte calling the players out yesterday for lacking maybe mental fortitude under pressure. And they were dreadful against Leicester. As good as they were against City, they were just as bad against Leicester. And that's the problem when you don't have a strong enough squad and you don't have enough depth and you don't have a solid defence. They only have really one proper defender, that's Romero. So I have no idea really what's going to happen tonight, but I think the injuries, like Bentancur especially, are going to hurt them.
Olivier Giroud, Arsenal man, going to come back and haunt Tottenham tonight potentially. Score the winner against Torino at the weekend for AC. So a man in form.
Yeah, it's just hard to see where Italian football's at. Like, I've just spent this morning, because I watched Liverpool-Everton, watching the Liam Brady documentary back. I've watched about half an hour of it. It's a really, really good watch. And when Liam was playing for Juventus, they were, it was the top league in the world. Most of that team that he played with went on to win the World Cup that year. Italian football's not in that space now. So if Tottenham were full strength, I'd fancy them, but because they're not, it's hard to see. Will Kane, Son, Kulusevski have the ball, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich this evening as well in Paris, both of those.
Not a bad tie.
No, they repeated the final, isn't it, from a couple of years ago. Amazing the PSG still haven't won this Champions League. But yeah, Liverpool-Everton, I really didn't take much out of it, to be honest. I think bigger tests are ahead with Everton or with the teams around them. Whether they can score enough goals to stay up is definitely a question. And with Liverpool, I think Real Madrid will tell a lot about where the health of Liverpool is. But I suppose for anybody a bit worried about Klopp's mood, the fact he was fist pumping to the crowd was a positive sign. And I think he seems to be up for the rebuild, however the rebuild will look in the summer. In terms of what else is going on, obviously the UEFA having its own report commissioned, and that independent report damning and really, really critical of UEFA.
Normally these are whitewashes.
Yes, and this was the opposite, actually.
So maybe this is an unedited version that they didn't get to in time.
Yeah. Just some of the quotes. The panel concluded UEFA's event owner bears primary responsibility for failures which almost led to disaster. It's remarkable no one lost their life. For the scenes around the Champions League final last May between Liverpool and Real Madrid. UEFA should have retained a monitoring and oversight role of security to ensure it all worked. It self-evidently did not. While there was a contributory fault of the French police and French Football Federation, UEFA was at the wheel, and there was no evidence for claims that ticketless fans were to blame. They claimed they branded reprehensible. So amazing that this can happen with the amount of money and millions that are swirling around the game.
Yeah, I think they also said that the policing was based on an understanding from the Parisian police that hooliganism had caused Hillsborough. Right? That's buried in the report as well, where you're like, what? How does anybody still think that? To this, like, how is that still there? And the fact that UEFA hadn't kind of tapped them on the shoulder and said, no, that's wrong. You don't need to use tear gas when people are just coming to use the tickets they've paid for. You don't need to be just spraying the tear gas in their face as a means of, like, saying we're not opening this gate just yet.
Sorry, the fact that Liverpool fans were herded into a perimeter fence and a motorway underpass, and they're having youths in Paris trying to rob tickets off them, and like to put up with that before a match is just.
It did feel dodgy AF before and after, and that whole kind of sense of there being a near miss. Like,
yeah, scandalous stuff.
John, you mentioned the Liam Brady documentary. I feel like I want to buy a Sampdoria jersey after it.
They're pretty cool, aren't they?
They're very, very, very cool. Like the whole documentary last night, even the parts where he's talking about the 79 Cup final against United, FA Cup final, and they're celebrating and the Irish flags on the front. You forget all the Irish names that were there, and he talks about being stopped at Heathrow Airport. All the players were constantly stopped. Obviously Irish people coming over to London during the Troubles were constantly questioned. They were only, of course, let through when they were saying, well, we're professional footballers. But like his life and career is just...
The 1980 FA Cup final against West Ham, in the Arsenal squad there were 7 Irish players in that squad.
It's unreal, like.
Which was always a good trivia question in school. But yeah, it's amazing that so few players from England would have gone and played abroad at all. Like Kevin Keegan, probably the only other one at the time. Sampdoria, yeah, I've never been to Italy. Kind of just tempted when you're seeing Liam speaking to Marco Tardelli in these beautiful houses and overlooking all these lakes that you
Lake Como.
Just want to get onto a plane, and walk around and people watch. Owen Morgan retiring as well. I see that from cricket. So obviously followed his dream to go to England, played with Middlesex since 2005, 275 times he played for them, 16 test appearances, but it was the one-day game that he really starred in, 126 times skipper in England. And obviously they won the World Cup for the first ever time under his watch in 2019. It's an amazing career.
It is an amazing career.
But it just struck me as a little strange that there was no mention of Ireland in his retirement statement.
One of our best athletes of the last 20 years.
He left home to follow his dream. Wasn't that what that's how, no mention of the Irish cricket team? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Where he played at a World Cup in 2007.
Yeah. Look, we're always going to have a tricky relationship with our nearest neighbour. But like in terms of all-time great Ireland sports careers,
oh, he's up there.
Do you know?
Well, certainly the last 20 years, he's one of Ireland's greatest athletes. I know he lined out in the white.
Not many sports people who won a World Cup.
No
equivalent. Now, okay, it's it's very important.
England, one of the greatest cricket nations in the world, and he captained them. I mean, they're like clearly set a bar. I mean, we're always. No one wants to say this, but we're always going to have there's always going to be an element of us talking about Eoin Morgan that everyone has a slight hint of jealousy in their mouths when they're talking about him because he moved to England. But I mean,
there was nowhere else for him to go.
No, you got to respect it. Like,
it's a different world. Like England is professional cricket. And I know we're trying to make strides here, but England is a completely different universe.
Say he was a baseballer and he won a World Series.
Oh, we'd be lauding him from the rooftops.
Like, say he played for the Yankees, which is basically what he's done, right? He's made it to be like the star batter / pitcher or all-rounder for the Yankees, and captained them to win a World Series, right? A Subway Series, basically. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty good. Well done. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fair play.
Which is it's a bit shit on our part, right?
100%. Well, we should appreciate and celebrate Eoin Morgan. It's tough to when he played for England. We probably for that reason don't do it. But maybe we should all take an introverted look at ourselves and.
He's a dub, isn't he?
Respect me as a dub.
From
yeah.
Rush,
Yeah. So straight on Dublin's Mount Rushmore.
Oof.
If you use a pun.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still happy with my Dublin Mount Rushmore. How many years is it? 2 years on?
You're not happy?
I am still very happy.
You picked the South Dublin one, John, did it?
No, well, when I think about it, actually, no, I picked the whole Dublin one. There was a North and a South, and then I picked the whole one. But then, so I picked Jim Gavin, Brian O'Driscoll, Padraig Harrington, and Paul McGrath. And Brian O'Driscoll is obviously originally from North Dublin anyway. He's from Clontarf. And then Brian Kerr, then I think, took out O'Driscoll and put in Michael Carruth. I think that's what happened.
Where's Sexton?
You see, right. you can only have one rugby player now.
Right, we didn't mean to open that
can of worms.
Yeah. But Morgan, it's pretty good. Right, John, good stuff.
All right, lads.
More from John on Saturday afternoon and Off the Ball on News Talk at 8:47 this morning. Up next, we're going to hear from Derek McNamara from reactrugby.com. First, Joe, Mick and Richie reflect on Ireland's win over France from last night's news round.
A few sporting things happened this weekend on the pitch as well.
Turns out they are genuinely, and we can say this soberly, this is not just hype, they are genuinely awesome. It's awesome. They're so good. They are so good.
But do you not still have this thing where you feel dirty or like somehow wrong in sort of admitting the evidence of your eyes?
No, I don't, because it's just so obvious.
I'm just getting to that point as well.
They're just so good.
I'll tell you what I was getting to that point is, when France came back, and we're like, France weren't bad, and that's what the reason it was a classic game was because how good France were.
And they ran the ball too much and played into Ireland's hands.
They turned all their tactics
kicking team into a running team, and Ireland said, well,
which made for great watching as well, I suppose. But when France were coming back into it and they had all the momentum at the start of the second half, and Ireland were making mistakes for the only time in the game, and then Ireland calmed it down. We can go into loads of different positives as to why, and Doris taking the game and the bench, all the inexperienced lads at the bench playing well, but more of the fact that was Ireland just showed this nous. And I was watching this thinking to myself, they're going to win this game, and they're actually and it's going to be comfortable. I actually, before Ringrose try anything like that, I just had this feeling that Ireland had settled here and it was going to be enough. And it's really hard to comprehend being an Irish sports fan all your life, and I don't think in any sport having ever supported a dominant team, maybe the Patriots or something, but in any of the main sports never supporting a dominant team, to sort of get your head around the fact that they're the team that I've watched do to my teams for my entire life. That's the Manchester United, or that's the New Zealand or whatever, and that's what Ireland are doing at the moment. And it takes a while for your brain to trigger, but once it does, you're like, God, we are comfortable here. We're triggered.
Right, that's the lads last night speaking about the game, and I'm delighted to say Derek McNamara of reactrugby.com is with us to parse some of the stats and figures. A nice one to do when we're winning games like this.
It is. I think there's a direct correlation between me joining to start doing this.
And us being the best team in the world.
It's just
it's
uncanny. Like
after
know.
the first game against New Zealand, though, I have to say,
I know, and
things turned around.
You believe now.
I believe now. I put my hand in the wound, and I'm like, I'm covered in blood.
Okay, don't worry. I'm pretty sure those days are going to come back, so don't worry about it.
It's all cyclical, right?
Yeah. No, well, like I think it's good to kind of jump back and even start where we left off last week, which was. World Rugby are trying to implement these new rules around the game to try and speed the game up and try and improve the overall standard of the game.
I just want to point out to everybody, we were on this. We've been talking about the ball and play time basically since we started last summer.
I've been doing it for around 8 years. It's the first time anybody's going to listen to me. So,
but it was the big talking point in all the papers afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at the difference. But you had, like, this is one of those bits where past performance is no indication. But actually, sometimes it really is.
Yeah, but it's more. So the one thing we want to try and remember, the word that we want to try and remember is conditioning. Okay, so in order for you to be conditioned to play this way, all players must be at a certain level. And when we actually take a kind of mile high view of it, we got to everybody who's involved in Irish rugby, from schools to club to international, all the way up, needs to take a step back and enjoy this moment and feel part of it. And as we lead up to the World Cup, because it's not just come as a result of. Now, obviously, there's one significant person whose fingerprints are all over this, who's leaving for France next year, Mr. Lancaster, because his way of training the Leinster team and being able to get them conditioned enough to be able to play at this level is a very significant part of the way in which why Ireland are playing this way. But I have a couple of graphs here just to kind of outline. And I'm sorry if these feel a little COVID-y. You would have seen these types of graphs before, but basically, if we have the first graph there, that'd be great. So basically, this is just the kind of ball and time in minutes over the last year and the international games through the summer and then autumn internationals. And the lines that are in green are the Ireland games. Okay, so anybody's not watching. Basically, we're just showing the average or the actual total number of game minutes per game over 2022.
That the ball is in play.
The ball is in play. So that's basically when the ball is kicked off, somebody catches it, goes to ruck and then kicks the ball out. We stitch those 7 or 8 seconds together to give us the actual amount of time of ball in play, which is really, really important for being able to help your team get conditioned. It's really important for you to be able to understand how much time your S&C coaches need to get your players ready for games. It's an enormously important metric that basically it's our starting point, basically.
It's also revealing about the team's philosophy. Ireland want the ball to be in play. We're like, you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see instinctively that the Andy Farrell era of Ireland is different from the Joe Schmidt era, in that maybe it's not. Maybe Joe Schmidt also kept the ball in play this amount of time, but it certainly feels like we're using this as a weapon as opposed to it being coincidental.
Yeah, and I think like the race is on now. The race is on now for teams to understand what Ireland are doing and try and catch up with them, because this trend is going up. Now there are elements within it. So like we look at the under-20s competitions as well, and they haven't seen that big increase in time and ball and play. So this from the looks of it right now, it looks as if this is just being implemented at the international level, at the highest level, which is grand. It's totally fine. I'm a professional. So the first weekend we did it, we looked at this in detail, was the first round of the interprovincials, or second round of interprovincials, and the ball and play was something astronomical. Obviously the referees are getting used to it, people are getting used to it, but
so two things have happened here. World Rugby have changed their rules, and Ireland were already in advance of the World Rugby rule changes, trying to turn this into our advantage.
Exactly. And so if we look at the graph, what we see is that Ireland have kind of like the highest on average rate of ball in play in 2022. So the highest number of minutes that were last year were 35 minutes of ball in play. However, since the implementation of these rules and the start of the Six Nations, last weekend's game went to 44 minutes of ball in play. Okay, so there's 44, 38, 37, 37 and 33. So the 33 game was the Italy-France game, where France kicked the ball out of play a lot. That was the only game that was. But like, if you look at what were the the top 5 games, top highest, 4 of them were in the last 2 weeks. So it just gives you an idea. And then if we go on to the next slide, this will give us an idea of what the implementation or implications are of this. We can see that the average number of ball and actual activities that we grade was around 2,200, and it's now jumped to just under 3,000, which is insane. It's totally insane.
So explain that. Sorry.
So basically, every time a player gets a ball, whether it's a carry, a catch, a pass, a kick, a ruck, a tackle assist, a counter ruck, a line out lift, line out throw, line out jump, every time we do that, we grade each instance based on whether the speed on the ball, whether it's the accuracy of pass, the accuracy of the ruck.
So naturally enough, the more the ball is in play, the more activity there happens.
Exactly.
And it's actually a seismic leap forward.
It's you're talking about a 30% increase, which is, I think we talked about it last week around, you doing 30% more work per day. It's okay one day or month a week, and this is what these guys do. They work harder, for a very short period of time, and they obviously have to get conditioned. But if you're not conditioned to play against Ireland and you're not ready to be working that hard, as soon as you get to a certain point in time, you're just not going to be able to physically exert that amount of energy. And what happens is that there's another effect, which is you're mentally not able to do it, so you start making mistakes. And that's, we talked about this last week, and that's exactly what happened in the game on Saturday. I think it was at the 43rd minute. The first point I saw it happening was the coming to the line out slow. France were really slow to get in the line out. You could see they were already beginning to dip, because they've already put in a full game's work by that stage. They'd already done 1,000 activities by that stage.
A ball and play obviously leads straight into the fact that everyone's talking about this as an unbelievable spectacle and a brilliant game, because clearly it helps. I don't want to simplify it too much, but is it just a case that Irish provinces and Ireland international level target French clubs and France internationally because they're so big that more ball in play?
No,
is it a fitness thing or what?
It's a fitness thing, yeah. Well, the way to look at it is you look at the likes of, say, Jim Gavin's or Gaelic football dynasty, you'd probably call it. And I remember going to a game, and I found it very interesting the way they would score. They would do this kind of circle around outside the 30-metre mark, I think 35. And basically they just pass the ball and circle. The players would go round and round in circles until they got to the optimal position and they weren't under pressure to take the kick. And that was gameplay. Then you also had the skill. So the skill was they would be able to get the ball and be able to ping a pass 30 metres and the ball land in the person's hand rather than bouncing. But then they also had the fitness. So those three things put together are what is important. You've got your game plan, which everybody knows. You've got your skill set levels at a certain level, so that if you can't have to pass that ball, you can do it. And then you've also got the work rate, so that everybody's working at the hardest rate. Ireland have that right now.
Tactical conditioning.
Yeah. So they're able to. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Everybody knows where they're supposed to go. But everybody has the skill set to be able to. And I think this is a new era in rugby. This is really exciting.
When you're at the game, it's remarkable that the ball is moved so quickly along the back line. You're not actually sure. So we're up in the crowd and very high up and looking down, and it's like, who has the ball? Oh, it's over there. Wow.
Yeah. And that's something that we can look into again. I think this is the sort of simplified look at it.
Yeah.
But we also look at the distance between each breakdown. So we would look at, the 10 metres per distance between, and a y-axis. And that, Ireland are right way up there, very high. So they spread the ball quite a lot. But France keep it really, really narrow. And that's counterintuitive to the way in which we think it is.
Well, maybe we can delve into that over the coming weeks.
Yeah.
The bit that you said that the race is on for everybody to catch up. The team who you'd fear the most being able to catch up in the period of time that we have is probably New Zealand, in that they have Joe Schmidt looking at this going, okay, you have the high level of skill, but you don't have the same level of being able to do this for the 120 minutes or however long these games are actually.
But the problem with that, though, Ger, is that you need to have everybody knowing what they're supposed to do. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. So, like, in the way in which Ireland play against New Zealand and they played against France at the weekend, for a defensive perspective, is they do something called close the door, right? And it's quite subtle. You probably won't, like, the vast majority of people won't see it, but when you're looking at the game, as much as unfortunately I am, you do see it. And that's basically, they only move ever move up when the player decides to pass. Okay, so basically you'll see they'll move up as soon as they can until the player gets the ball in their hand, and once they make a decision either to pass or to carry, they then move, they sprint up again. So basically they shut the door. And the way in which the French tried playing last weekend and the way in which the New Zealanders usually play is that they've usually got one guy who's able to break a tackle or break a play or make an amazing, game changing play. But if that's taken out, if you're cutting out the decision making or the ability to do that, then that's how you beat these teams. So it's not just the skill, it's not just the fact that they can go left or right. It's the fact that they're able to, and like you can see that the breakdown in the
defense
try
structure is so well.
Yeah. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and it's massive credit to Irish rugby.
Okay.
The next slide, Derek, you're looking at performance by position, which is quite interesting here. I'm basically looking at it, all except the front row, Ireland outperformed France essentially.
Yeah, but fundamentally, well, the second row as well.
Marginally.
And then the centres as well.
Well, yeah, a couple.
So basically, we have our back row who would be the best in the world right now.
For the podcast listeners though, the French front row is slightly ahead. The second row, they're level. The centres are level as well.
And so, and what we're saying here is that we're taking those. I mean, so there was 3,306 of those. There was 1,800 of them were Ireland's, and what we're doing is we then say, okay, well that's kind of like a score based on the quality of the player's performance. So the pass, how accurate it was, a 5 is best, and the 4 is really good, 3 is expected, and 2 is ball goes to play and our ground, and 1 is a turnover. When we aggregate all the scores by these positions, whether it's even the substitutes, we can then average out and say, okay, which of these positions are making more mistakes and which of these positions are better, so that we can then build a game plan around specifically this, how to beat a team. And as you can see, the back row were obviously better. The halfbacks, I think Intermac probably had a poor game, if I'm honest, by his standards. He struggled to get into the game.
Because Dupont obviously had a great game.
Dupont was off the charts, like he probably had the best game in the competition so far.
And still at a half-back pairing level, Ireland beat them.
Yeah, because Sexton had a great game as well. Sexton had a really, really top game. And there's probably something we can go into in a bit more detail next week, or when we don't have the games actually to do. But yeah, from and even the back row as well. So the kicking, catching, and passing and carrying, Ireland were significantly better than the back three, even though the French player came out a little bit, Ger, as you predicted.
Yeah. Kick to them willy-nilly at your peril. Like, no, that's not how they play anymore. It's like, no, it's pretty good.
It wasn't bad, but it was more poor defending than French.
There was a lot of poor defending in the middle of that, but that's the dread hand of the statistician coming in. No, it's only poor defending. It was glorious. It was absolutely glorious. We can totally appreciate it now that we've won that game.
Of course, yeah. But don't forget it. And you look at the Scottish game and the Welsh game, and you look at the Irish game, there was only a couple of points in it at half time, but it was that conditioning and that ability to, and the quality of these positions to be able to push on and pull away.
It did feel like we were superior in the first half, and it did feel like we were going to be able to do what we were doing repeatedly, whereas it took that moment of a bit of genius and a few missed tackles for their try to happen. The tens comparison, you've done that for us, because we're obviously we don't know how well Ross Byrne is going to do over the long period of time, but we're beginning to build up some pictures of what happens. Previously we would have said that whenever Sexton isn't in the team, the difference is chalk and cheese when Ireland play, no matter who the fill-in is. How did he do at the weekend?
Yeah, so this is just a graph kind of outline, so we need to kind of take into consideration what they're doing and then how well they're doing it. So if we look at this graph, we're kind of showing the kind of key 5 skill sets of a 10. So you've got carrying, kicking, passing, tackling and rucking. And by aggregating what the players are doing, we're able to say, okay, well, Ross Byrne now Sexton and Intermac had nearly twice as many of activities as Byrne, so it's not as very equal. So that's why it's out of percentages. But we're showing here is that Ross Byrne carries the ball 44% of the time, Intermac 41%, and Sexton 38%. So, and then if you look at the kicking stats, Sexton kicks the ball 23%. Intermac 15 and Byrne 16. So there's a little bit of discrepancy between them, but we would need more than one game to be able to show. But fundamentally, Byrne had a good game. He had a good game from what he was asked to do. He was, similar to what Sexton and Intermac were. But when we go to the next slide, it kind of shows the kind of reality of the situation, which is the quality. So when we aggregate the quality of those kicks, the quality of those passes, the quality of those carries, we can see that Sexton's carrying and passing is significantly better. But the thing about it is that this gives somebody like the RFU or somebody like the Leinster branch or Leinster Rugby the ability to go in and say, okay, this is factually the difference between the two players in passing. This is Byrne, Ross. We need you to work on your passing over this distance.
These are your targets,
and this is how we set short, medium, long-term goals using analytics to help players and coaches improve.
Okay, so I think from an Irish rugby fan's perspective, the fact that the fall off to Ross Byrne is nowhere near as pronounced as it might have been in previous years is really encouraging. Like we're not totally toast if Sexton is unavailable for a big game.
This is genuinely, like, how many hours a week do you talk about Sexton?
Well, it's the most important, literally the most important character in Irish sport.
Yeah. No, I'd say, structures, fitness, skill level, and the ability of a team to pull all together is always going to be more important than the one individual. So we can see that at the weekend. We lost our front row, we lost back row, our second row with Ty Byrne, we lost our scrum halves, we lost our centres, but the structure of the actual team stayed the same, and the ability of the team to play on. So I wouldn't be as stressed as you are around, whether it be Ross Byrne.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
We're getting there, Ger. Okay, yeah. We're getting there.
We are.
The kicking stats aren't. So this is ball in play as opposed to kicking off the tee.
Yeah, no, kicking. So when we say kicking, we say kick to touch, kick up and play, box kicks, crossfield kicks, kick at goal, drop goals. It's an amalgamation of all those together.
Would Intermac's stats then be affected by the fact that Ramos is taking the?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, well, it's again that would be taken into consideration the kicking. So you can see Intermac in the percentage and what they do. So this is definitely something that is completely different to React Rugby than our competitors. We're looking at not just what teams do, but how well they do implement those activities. And what our difference is that, like, the activities themselves could be considered what the coach's game plan is for the team. We want you to do this. The grades allow us to identify the player's ability to implement that game plan. So if we see a skewed line where it's a couple of players are up and down, and that's basically the players not understanding what it is they're supposed to be doing, or just out of their depth.
And presumably you want to be seeing Ross Byrne's stats higher than given he's not in the pitch for maybe as long as Johnny Sexton. I know he was replaced reasonably early, but you want to be seeing Ross Byrne's stats up there. Which they appear to be for carrying certainly and passing.
Yes, but again, it's how that fits in. Is that what the coach wants him to do?
Yeah.
Does the coach want him to pass or carry? And like that's something that the Welsh and the Italians are having trouble with, which is the ball gets to their 10 and the 10 turns around and the players are too close to them. Like you'll see it with the Welsh game. Players aren't in position where they know where they're supposed to be, so the 10 doesn't then know what to do, because I'm not going to pass the ball a half a metre to somebody because it's just going to be a hospital pass. So that all these things kind of add up, and our analytics are able to then identify why or how or who is responsible for that.
Let's talk about Caelan Doris. How did he do?
Yeah, Caelan, I might have been a bit harsh one of my first pods I was in here with about Caelan. I think I might have said he needs to bring in Conan. But basically what we have here is a
You've
graph.
changed your tune, have you?
I have indeed. My tail is well between my legs here. But basically we have two graphs here, one indicating the quality of performance and the second one looking at the number of activities that are happening he's involved with, or his production in the game. And basically for people that are listening to this, it's the trend line are both going in the right direction, where his performance, the quality of his performance have increased significantly. and that's over everything. I tried going in to see whether or not it was based on his carrying or his rucking or his lineouts, and it's just a bit of everything. It's not, there's no one trend, so which is really, really good. It just shows that he's improving in every performance, and this is the quintessential for any teams, any players, any coaches that are out there. Understanding players that are improving is so important to your team's performance. This graph just shows how important he is. So for people at home, the first game that we have on this graph is the second test against New Zealand. He had 83 instances in the game, and on Saturday he had 130 player into activities graded. So 50 odd more activities involved in the game, and this just shows the game plan of the team and how Doris fits into it.
Also his maturity, growing sense of confidence and all that kind of stuff.
Leader, yeah. And then the graph on top then just shows the quality of his performance. So when we average out all of Caelan's scores or all his grades, he goes from a 3.28 to a 3.42, but he's kind of on that level the whole time. So it just means that he's getting to the breakdown quick enough, or he's making the right decisions at the breakdown, he's making the right decisions at the line out, he's making the right decisions at the passing, and everything. So he's very, very important player for Ireland.
I don't know, have you done all the other games yet, or is that the type of thing that happens over the rest of the week?
No, well, we've got two of the games done. Where the Super Bowl got in the way of the third game, which it's very disappointed with the defense of I forgot
the Eagles.
The Eagles, yeah. I thought they were going to come good.
No sacks.
But I think you got to put it up to the offensive line for Kansas City. They were able to stop anything that was put at them.
Yeah.
Obviously the situation got to Phillies instead.
Yeah, I'm sure their defence, but not to their kid quarterback who had an all-time great game and still ends up on the losing side. Yeah. Is there any other trends you saw from the rugby that you think, like the French kicking, any of that stuff that Hugo Keenan obviously had a great game? That was one of the other things you'd mentioned to us.
Yeah, Hugo had another brilliant, really excellent game. He so the other kind of major element, or the major identifier that France were right on their feet was it at the 56th minute, I think it was, maybe I have it in my notes, but basically you had when was it? It was the 56th minute, where the 50-22, you could see that the French were out of position. That's a massive indicator that the players are becoming fatigued, where they think they were out of position, that they weren't getting into position, because you just don't see there being one player in the backfield at international level. But Hugo, the way his positioning is immaculate. His ability to understand where that kick is going to be, and then also coming out. So it was interesting to see France, anytime they kicked and the ball landed somewhat outside of 22, you had Hugo running the ball back, which is definitely different to what had previously happened in the games where Ireland would have just kicked it back.
So why do you think we're doing that?
So we're looking for that similar situation to the try by Hugo. So we're looking for that. Okay, can we get into midfield? Can we break down? Can we get into that third or fourth phase where we can set up a strike play, or just to tire bodies out? And like I'm going to have to roll rugby down after this, but what's the hooker's or prop's name who's yellow carded? The Antonio. Yeah, like we found two other instances in the game, three altogether, where he could be cited for that. Where there was a missed late tackle on Sexton, and then there was a tackle off the ball on Porter, I think it was, where it was just like and I suppose he's trying to bring in the same type of game plan that an La Rochelle did, where it's quite aggressive. You cut down the space of Leinster. You try and command the game a lot more, but you're very, very physical. He probably tried to implement that, and that wasn't what the game plan was from France. So he went out of his, and he he's going to miss a couple of games now because of it.
Yeah, okay. All right, really interesting stuff. Derek, thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
It's Derek McNamara from reactrugby.com if you want to check out more of that as well. 13 minutes past 9, we're going to talk to Jonny Cooper in just a moment. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. OTB Gold is Barry Ryan talking about his book, The Ascent. An all-new episode of Dadcast at 3, the career retrospective of Matty Holland at 4, the life and times of Johnny Kilbane at 6 is OTB Gold, and then Joe is back in the show, in the chair tonight from 7 with the return of A Slight Tangent and plenty more. Make sure you follow us across all of our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. You can get that on the Go Loud app. As I said, after the break, Jonny Cooper.
OTB AM. Off the ball.
How much bigger is Celtic than Leeds?
A lot.
Wow. Are you having that, Cameron?
Not at all, no. I would say
Really?
we're probably about the same, like,
No
given the
chance,
historic.
Cameron.
Really?
What?
I'm glad I'm in between the two of you here.
No, I respect Leeds, I absolutely do, but no, I wouldn't think that
All
they
the history.
are on the
We've
same
years
level.
and years of history.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Okay, I'm delighted to say we're joined now by former Dublin Gaelic footballer and Electric Ireland Sigerson Cup winner with DCU DE, Jonny Cooper, as he looks ahead to Wednesday's Electric Ireland Sigerson Cup final between UL and UCC. This year, through its hashtag First Class Rivals campaign, Electric Ireland celebrated the unexpected alliances formed between county rivals as they come together in pursuit of some of the most coveted titles across Camogie and GAA. Jonny, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, Ger. Yeah, really good. Not too bad. Nice bright morning, so really good. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. As far as I know, the Sigersons you won were all full of stuffed with high quality dubs. Were there any non-dubs on your teams that you were actually friends with at the end of that?
It's always good to start with a loaded question. So, yeah, there's there's plenty of dubs, all right. But I know there's loads. Aidan Walsh and Michael Murphy and Robbie Henry. Yeah, there was plenty of guys from outside the M50 as well. So really good days.
Michael Murphy's pretty good.
He's a decent player. I think it was the Monaghan influence, Niall Moyna being the manager, potentially.
yeah.
That we can give some credit to him.
True. And Mick Bohan and a few other good leaders there too.
Jesus, that's one of the great all-time backroom teams then, is it?
There was a couple of heavy hitters all right along the years. Yeah, well, Mick Bohan would have been the main coach in fairness, and obviously he's with the ladies last couple of years and with the men's prior to that, and Niall Moyna. As mentioned, I think he's moved on now. He's still in the university. We're not coaching. Paddy is obviously there now.
Was it enjoyable? Because you guys obviously had pressure of playing for inter-county, but there's this kind of just this little release valve where you're with your mates and you're having the crack with people who you know you're going to come up against potentially later on down the year. So how did you prepare for that from just a mental level?
Completely. I know we were joking there about playing with different guys, but like the perspective, and I know again we're joking about clubs not getting outside the M50, but even from a personal point of view, like the massive amount of insight, social, I guess diversity of background. You know, obviously you're playing with quality guys, and that's great because on the pitch is important. But even from a personal development, stay in touch with plenty. A lot of them guys that I would have been playing Sigerson with over them years. So I think it's a little bit different now. Obviously, out of the college scene a good number of years now, I think it's a little bit different. The inter-county scene absolutely has first priority, whereas I think at the time there was a little bit of I guess people probably went out of their way a little bit more to play Sigerson. I would think. I respect the competition massively, and hopefully it doesn't erode. Maybe because the space and time it's been given the last couple of years with the inter-county pressure, obviously coming a little bit heavier and stronger. It'd be interesting to see where it goes, but hopefully it remains. And I don't think it can be ring fenced, but somewhere in that spape I think will be useful to maybe pursue.
Yeah, for sure. The Michael Murphy, I was chatting to him recently, is heading up the sports department in Letterkenny, and he was just talking about the importance of third level education generally. And I think that sometimes we take it for granted. I was listening to the football pod, and Paddy Andrews, who I think was a teammate of yours, was again, and Tommy were just talking about, like, it's really important that we do actually give this some space, whatever space it's required, because it's an opportunity for players, as you say, to mix from other backgrounds, but also just to mature at their own pace, because everybody matures at a different pace, and sometimes you're ready for inter-county and sometimes you're not.
No, fully agreed. I just listened to your rugby conversation a couple of minutes ago. I mean, one of the unfortunate downsides. Certainly from my experience of GA is obviously you get to see guys across the 4 white lines, but beyond that, from other counties that is, but beyond that, it doesn't probably venture too far. And college is certainly that outlet. You know, you get to mix, you get to see people in very different lights. I mentioned a moment ago the social, the personal development, the perspectives you get of people with different backgrounds, and hopefully then the diversity of thought, various other elements that come into your psyche that, to be quite honest, aside from the third level education in any university, be it in ATU with Michael Murphy or DCU with, you know, Niall Moyna, obviously the academics that you're getting or just the exposure in that regard in terms of upskilling yourself, you know, education wise, thinking from a number of different angles, and hopefully, as I said a moment ago, it doesn't erode or doesn't continue to, you know, there's a massive amount of pressure, but at the same time I reflect, you know, I'm out of a number of years, I reflect on my time, you know, Sunday, Wednesday was music to my ears. You know, fortunately lads get injured and that's the downside of it too, but you know, Sunday, Wednesday, or at the time it was actually Friday, Saturday, a Sigerson weekend. And then the following weekend, you were playing National Football League. So, look, not ideal. And if you were designing it from scratch, would you do it that way? No, probably not. But at the same time, I think there's massive upsides, as you mentioned there, and upshots to it all if the balance is struck. And I appreciate that's a big if at times.
Sorry, go on. I know you've done that the Masters in Behavioural Psychology, Johnny, which is fascinating as well. And it strikes me when you're talking about coming up against lads later in the year for your county that you would have played with at Sigerson level. Does it have an impact at all on performance? Like when you're playing against someone you know so well, if you're up against a forward that you're friends with and you socialise with, as you say, throughout the year at college level, or is it just a case of at intercounty level you have to be a robot?
Yeah, no, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, coming up against lads, seeing them in as a normal, as we all should, as a normal person, as a human, etc., what they like, what they don't like, what their tendencies are, what their fears, what their, you know, motivations are. Obviously, when you're playing into county and you don't know guys as such, you just take them on face value. You watch them and you do your analysis, and they kick and they run and they catch and they jump, etc. But obviously, that's only, you know, 10% of the actual picture. So getting to know lads in different lights is definitely very helpful. Albeit I probably wouldn't personally have come up against too many forwards. It would have been, you know, the likes of Rob Henley and Michael Murphy, so Michael at times, but Neil Collins and these guys from Roscommon more so in my circle. So definitely useful to know. It probably just gives you a greater appreciation, if I'm being honest about it, because as I said, you probably don't get the opportunity to socialise or converse beyond just the 60, 70 minutes on a football pitch. So I think it's very useful. Perhaps very useful to guys from a few different perspectives, and albeit at the time, personally anyway, probably didn't take full stock of it, but certainly now looking back, you're like massive opportunity to stay in contact with everyone from, you know, David Kelly and Sligo to Carl Craig and in Connacht doing fantastic work. And I guess from a networking, from a professional point of view as well, years later, as it should be, you'll fall back on these relationships beyond just the medals or the Sigerson Cup wins that you had, albeit as important as they are at the time.
One thing I wanted to bring up there, Paddy I think has spoken as well about being dropped from the team and using that as motivation and watching the team be successful. With Conor McKenna on last week, and he was saying he was at a game in Croker when he could have been playing, and he felt a little bit sick when Tyrone were 5-1 up against, you know, just that he will be missing out on it. I think sometimes we just assume that the Dublin success story is relatively straightforward, but actually as individuals you all had to nurse your own motivations at different stages along the way. Were you always able to refer back to the first bit when you weren't in the team to keep you going at the absolute peak, or how did you top up the levels of desire and motivation to keep going?
Yeah, I think certainly for me, and look, you're right, everyone has their own journey, you know, whether it's Kieran Kilkenny that comes straight onto the team and plays and has been playing ever since, or whether it's, you know, Brian Fenton that doesn't play, you know, minor, and all of a sudden it takes a couple of years. Everyone has their own journey. Myself, no different. I did play, albeit on the All-Ireland winning team in 2010, captain of that team, and thought it would be just a natural kind of next step, and didn't happen to me for another couple of years. Eventually got an opportunity in their path then 2012 just to be on the squad. Yeah, I think certainly for me, a big motivator was it took a couple of years to get there, and would have endeavoured and been as disciplined as possible in terms of training and so on at that time, just to get an opportunity, just to get onto a possible squad, which is 30 odd players, never mind a match day, or never mind a 15, or never mind as it transpired for me to be captain of the team. So certainly at times very useful to me, Ger. I think then as my career progressed, I kind of lost that bit of, you know, that bit of sense of, you know, because I was there and I was firmly there 3 or 4 years into it, so I was more trying to find those little, I guess, diverse lateral insights that might have been there. And I know we've talked before and around just gleaning insights from different sports, different organisations, different people across the board. And that was probably then more, as the second half of my career took off, the opportunity then just to keep, as I am now, remain curious to know that I know very, very little. So what's out there and the exciting opportunity that's there just to, as I said, upskill and glean, and maybe, as it was for me for the last number of years, try and influence and lead that group as best as possible.
When you're trying to deal with and process disappointments like that, Jonny, like not getting into a squad, I think I've heard you speaking before about that semi-final defeat to Donegal as well, and how you were out that night and talking about how you felt your own preparation maybe wasn't as good as it could have been, and blaming yourself for some Donegal goals. Is that an important part of being an elite athlete? You almost have to, even if you don't feel like you were at fault, you almost have to take some level of responsibility to keep your ego in check and maybe, I guess, give yourself something to come back the following year and have that as motivation.
Yeah, I think so, Shane. I mean, like, for me, it's trying to, and we're all, as I said, have our own journeys. Certainly at the start of my career, 11 or 12 years ago, like the limited self-awareness, the limited, I guess, in some regards, ability to be able to be humble and be very honest with myself, never mind be honest with teammates and so on. So I think, only from a personal perspective, you build up that sort of, I guess, awareness of self, and that comes through, doing education. GPA been very, very good over the years. I've gone through some different diplomas in executive leadership and masters in organizational behavior and psychology and that type of thing. So for me, kind of that bit of self-awareness is important to be able to, I guess, honestly reflect upon yourself, but then also when you have the opportunity to talk to coaches or managers or even colleagues and your peers and teammates, that you actually have the ability to bring the pertinent and the right information to the table, as opposed to maybe when you're 20, 21, etc., maybe not as mature, you're not as developed, maybe don't have as much perspective, perhaps experience, obviously, at the time as well. So I think that self-awareness is probably the key bit as I reflect upon the question that you asked.
Jonny, you did a round of media yesterday. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the papers, if you've been sent the clippings yet, but there's a lot of focus on just your brutal honesty about your recovery from the horrific attack you suffered. And I just wondered, is it something that you're comfortable talking about now? Is it something that you're never going to be comfortable talking about? Because I hadn't, obviously we'd read some stuff before about it, but I hadn't really heard you talk about it.
It's a funny one for me, Ger, a little bit like, as a question is asked now, I'll be as honest as possible in answering the question, but probably wouldn't be going out of my way maybe to share in lots of ways. Very happy to help. And even only this morning, if I'm being honest, somebody got in contact with me to say they'd been through a similar situation and how do I deal with it, basically, and looking for a bit of help. And for me, that's just magic. That's gold dust. If I can help somebody in any situation beyond just performance and sports, and day to day I'm involved in, organizations and working with leadership teams and high potentials and so on. So, like, to be brutally honest about being crude, I know it's early part of more, like it's 11 or 12 stab wounds to your head. I mean, and some of them are millimeters, a couple on the eyelid, a couple on the ears, many on the back of my neck. Like, it should have been, like, there's no doubt in my mind, it should have been curtains for me, and that's not curtains from football career. Like, it was very, very close. So, and Shane mentioned earlier on that the big thing for me was that Donegal performance and my own preparation for that performance, I guess, as it transpired, put me in that situation, and that was kind of a massive development and learning for me, to just be as prepared as possible, and probably endeavoured, I don't know if I ever got there with my former teammates, but endeavoured to earn their respect in terms of my preparation as well as my on-field performances. So look, I'm very happy to talk about it, but at the same time, it's obviously it's a touchy enough subject that needs to be unpacked and maybe spoken about in certain ways. But as I said, that person that got in touch with me, like, that makes the world of difference to me, to be able to possibly support somebody that's maybe going through a difficult challenge or journey that I might have been through, and that resonates with them.
Yeah, I've no doubt you won the respect of your teammates. Famously, Berno called you a process ninja, so that definitely happened. I think, like, when you talked about suffering fear from it afterwards, I think it's a universal response that many people have to trauma, and to be honest, I feel like showing that publicly is a vulnerability that we all need to show more of, that we all need to talk about these things, because otherwise we kind of skirt around what it means to be a human being and don't really fulfill our full potential.
Yeah, and it's something that resonates in my professional environment. As I mentioned a moment ago, I get to work with leaders and senior leadership teams, and we talk a lot about connecting with your people, connecting with your teams, showing care and demonstrating that, but also to your point of being vulnerable and being able to actually be yourself and be authentic and be you. We all have stories and all have pasts and all have, I guess, ways in which we were brought up or different experiences, and sharing them. I just have one very, very small snippet. Equally, if we were in a different medium, a different conversation today, we could go around the table and we could unpack various things, and profound sort of experiences, I think, are certainly worth sharing. Obviously, there's a time and place to do it, and there's that moment, etc., to do it. But I think you're right, and probably we do a lot of, again, from professional work, a lot of kind of collaboration and knowledge sharing with the Southern Hemisphere colleagues and so on that are down there. They're really, really good, in particular at sort of, just being open. Not that the Irish people aren't open, but being more open and more open to, whatever I have, I'm bringing it forward, and that's the best of me. I know it's not perfect. I'm not perfect, certainly, but bringing that forward and being, I guess, honest in that regard can only be more powerful. I think the Irish way and the Irish sort of human as such is we're certainly getting there, but I think we have a bit of work to do, and that's sort of what makes my job every day fascinating, and trying to help and support people in terms of their performance potential, that being one powerful element to it.
I suppose that's why I actually brought it up, and I appreciate, it is a very delicate subject, but the decision to go public and to talk about it, that's kind of, it's in the papers today, and people can read more details on it. But I do think that shows, a care beyond yourself, and it can't have been an easy decision to talk about.
No. But you can't bury things away, or certainly that was my perspective. In some ways, albeit a Z-lister, when you're playing for the Dublin football team, you're sort of public in lots of ways, and I just felt for a number of reasons it's important to get it out there, but also to own. I firmly feel accountable for putting myself and putting my family to a lesser extent in kind of awkward situations during that particular time. So I felt ownership and accountable to the front up in lots of ways, be honest and be open. Everyone has a couple of drinks on a Friday and Saturday. It wasn't ideal for me that night. It was an unfortunate event, but at the same time, it was an incredible learning. Wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but at the same time, for me, and I spoke about this before, around my ego and other elements just not being right, not being aligned, and not being, where they needed to be, because I love supporting people and teams and performance. And if you as a leader, which, as I said, I was lucky enough to be for the Dublin team for a number of years, if you're not there, and if you're not accountable, if you're not honest, and you're not presenting yourself in the moment, in the situation, and you're burying some things, albeit some of those things might be delicate, I just don't see how it fully you get the potential out of yourself. So yeah, look, I think it's going to be a bit of a journey. I've sort of unpacked it a little bit. Some of it's been public, obviously had conversations at home and whatnot as well, and that's been very, very helpful. But I still get scared when I'm on my own and it's dark. I'll be very honest. And at times I don't like to be places that are no street lights and that type of thing, and kind of looking over my shoulder. I wouldn't put the earphones in as maybe I used to do. If you're listening to music, I'd be very, very vigilant. That's just one kind of thing that's followed me around the last number of years. But as I said, it's good to own it, and it's good to, and thanks for asking the question, it's good to talk about it too.
Yeah, I think it's really brave to talk about it, and I think that I think we as a country definitely have a journey to go when it comes to being open. We're definitely getting better at it, 100% getting better at it, but and I think these conversations, I hope, are helping. And if there is anybody out there who gets any comfort from it, to know that, because you were an elite athlete, you could absolutely look after yourself, you could absolutely protect yourself, but that you still feel vulnerable when there aren't streetlights or when there's darkness or when you're on your own. And I think that a lot of people are going to identify with that, particularly people who've been through anything on the scale of things that you went through.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, look, like trauma and going through certain instances, they're certainly not pretty, and there's lots of learnings, but upon reflection, and that's the important thing, like time does pass. Like for me, the sunlight, the sunlight comes down on my Dublin football career, but every morning, like this morning, the sunlight comes up and there's a new, and people speaking, people being open, as you said, I think there's a bit of ways to go for us as a kind of a nation. But at the same time, I think it's definitely turning, and there's definitely lots more opportunity for people to reach out. And invariably there always is somebody's ears that are there that you can rely upon, albeit you mightn't think it at the time.
Johnny, you've been really good with your time, and I know you've got to go, but I do have one final question. How long is it going to be before we see you on a sideline coaching? Because it sounds like you got a lot of knowledge to impart.
I don't know. I'm still massively curious. The retirement thing doesn't sit well. Massively curious. I'm going to continue to pull a couple of threads around, just trying to stay open and connect with as many different people. I don't know. Look, I don't know if I'll be even any good as a coach or beyond that. But as I said, very interested to help learn and also help translate people's performance potential. I don't know what context that might be. Maybe it's business, maybe it's not. But wouldn't rule out anything. But at the same time, I know I have a massive journey of knowledge and understanding to gain in the next couple of years too.
Well, enjoy the retirement wherever it takes you, Johnny. Great to talk to you again. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Ger. Thanks, Shane.
It's Jonny Cooper there, who's of course helping us to promote the fact that it's Sigerson week. So yeah, his story just puts everything in perspective in a lot of ways. Well, it sounds strange to say it, but because Jim Gavin's dressing room was so closed, as in we didn't in the media or in public see or hear anything from it, which is probably part of the reason why they were so successful. When you hear someone like Johnny speaking openly, it nearly has more weight, because we didn't hear any of those Dublin footballers talk for their own reasons, of course, for performance reasons. But Johnny speaks so openly and so well about his incident, that it's just it definitely is an encouragement to other people who maybe wouldn't have otherwise. Yeah. All right, it's 35 minutes past 9 o'clock this morning. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And tomorrow's show, Keith Wood, Graham Hunter, Mags Darcy and plenty more. Right now, the rest of that Philippe Auclair interview from a little bit earlier on about the madness of King Pep.
Mr. Philippe Auclair is waiting patiently. Good evening, Philippe.
Good evening to you.
So the Manchester City story is a week old only at this stage. We have seen Pep Guardiola double down in his defence at his Friday press conference, and we've certainly seen the fans make their feelings towards the Premier League anthem very, very clear. So I suppose this is the first moments of what will be a long, painful, protracted case.
Yes, and I think what you can expect is that things are probably going to go in the background in not too long, because we had the announcement, so therefore we have huge amount of media attention. Then we had the press conference in which Pep Guardiola, as you said, the ball down was incredibly aggressive, actually, I thought. And also, it has to be said some things which are simply not correct. He's either badly informed or he expressed himself in a way that he perhaps shouldn't have. But I think it's going to disappear in the background quite quickly, because the process, despite the fact that the other clubs would like this matter to be resolved as quickly as possible for obvious reasons of sporting integrity, if nothing else. Unfortunately, the indications are that it might take much longer than what was hoped to be end of the season, or before the beginning of next season. And it looks like we're looking at a much more protracted legal dispute, because the problem is that 115 different charges, well, if you want to delay the proceedings, or if you want to make it sure that it takes as much time as possible, it's quite easy, because you go into great detail for absolutely every single one of those 115 charges. Yes. It's going to be complicated. So which is why I'm expecting, what we have at the moment, the media whirlwind and the attention placed on Manchester City's alleged misdemeanors to recede in the background. Unless, of course, should they win the Premier League, I think there might be some interesting reactions to that.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
No, I dare say you're right. Guardiola is obviously a very interesting figure in all of this. Back in May of last year, and the quotes resurfaced naturally enough this week, he talked about how he had sought assurances from the club, and he said, if it turns out, and I said it to them, if it turns out that you're lying to me, I won't be your friend anymore, was the way he put it. And he emerged on Friday, and he certainly didn't kick to touch in a similar way. He became, he assumed the role of defender-in-chief. He has taken a huge amount of his reputation in doing so. And you wonder what assurances he's been given, because akin to a player, committing a foul or diving and then celebrating or not celebrating, and knowing that VAR will ultimately show them up. Pep can be very strong right now, and he gets, he's lauded when he walks out at the Etihad, but VAR is coming. Well, we'll get on to VAR. A functioning, we hope, VAR is coming. And so, if Pep sort of better be right here, because to double down the way he has is an interesting move.
Well, yes, but I'm not that surprised that he did that. He can be quite a prickly character, as I think any journalist who's ever attended one of his press conferences or dared to ask an inconvenient question will testify. He's obviously been given assurances by the club and by his employers. But also, I think there is a part of it, I think he's become impervious to that kind of criticism, and as very much I would say the Manchester City galaxy has become, in a way, he's been in place for a very long time. He's been part of that hierarchy for a very long time indeed. And I think at one point, when people are in a situation where basically they're not questioned, in a situation when they are protected, they develop this, imperviousness to truth and to reality at times.
Yeah, I know. It did cross my mind if there must be an echo chamber aspect to life at Man City.
Yes, it's a very strange club. It's a very unique club, because we should never forget, by the way, that Manchester City is only one of a dozen clubs which are part of this galaxy of the City Football Group, which is a dimension of the debate that nobody has really quite touched upon, because it's pretty obvious that the whole project, and it's a huge project, is based, the foundation stone is Manchester City in England. Should they get into serious trouble, the whole project would actually be seen in a completely different light and would be endangered. It's a real existential threat, which might also explain why the reaction has been so harsh from Manchester City and from, as you said, this defender-in-chief, Pep Guardiola. So the stakes are so high that, in a way, I suppose, he feels compelled to behave in such a way. But, it's not the first time that Pep Guardiola has said things which denoted a certain... that he didn't quite read the room properly. It's not the first time in his career at Manchester City, or indeed before as a manager, that he has said things which for him are pretty obvious, and he doesn't seem to care very much what others are thinking of what he's saying, to be absolutely honest. And neither do they. They're a behemoth. They crush everything which is placed in front of them, certainly in the sporting sense. And when you develop that, perhaps you develop a sense of invincibility. And as well, I'm not too sure. One of the things which surprised me is that I can understand that he would come up in defense of his club and saying, many people are finding us guilty before, the panel has deliberated, then a verdict has been reached. But that's not what he said. He actually said things like, we've been proved innocent at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is simply untrue. Yes. That's not the case. It was thrown out because of the statute of limitations. Everybody knows that.
And that's what I find so interesting about his position, because, he must know that, because everybody knows that. That's a kind of the most infamous aspect of that cast ruling. So he must know that. And even just there's what the hierarchy have told him, but he must have read about the Mancini arrangement, for instance, in Der Spiegel.
Yes.
And he must think to himself, it has been quite the decade at Man City. There's been a lot of money. I just want, maybe, but like, and that's where I felt his head was in May of 22. That was a very reasonable, under the circumstances, response on his part. I thought that I've sought assurances, I trust these people, and they've given me assurances. If they're lying to me, I've told them we're done. And I thought that, it's not perfection, but it's not a bad way of handling those questions. So I don't know what's happened in the last 8-9 months, but that it just how no one in his world is saying well, tread softly here. It's not beyond the bounds.
Well, yes, and also the fact that he actually named quite a few clubs and a few people, including Daniel Levy of Tottenham, as being almost the instigators of a cabal against Manchester City, is quite extraordinary. I was half expecting charges to be brought, bringing the game into disrepute when he said that. I mean, if I were Daniel Levy, I would be very, very angry about this. Very angry.
Yeah.
And, but, it was said in the heat of the moment. Perhaps sometimes he can be a very passionate man. And we know, and I know that and everybody knows that we know that that we know, and so on, that there are loads of things that we can't talk about openly yet. And we've got to wait for the due process to be... but I think people can read what was in the Spiegel, can also read about the charges we were brought by UEFA and make up their own mind and think, at least have some kind of opinion or informed opinion. But we shall see. I mean, let's hope in any case that we don't have to wait like 3 or 4 years before we get to the end of this. Let's hope it's going to be much, much quicker. Because to be honest, yes, sporting integrity is also at risk here. Which is one thing we shouldn't forget. Because, it depends. When the decision is taken, imagine that should the charges be found to have credibility and Manchester City be punished in the way that the severity of the alleged breaches would lead us to believe, it wouldn't be a fine. It would be much, much bigger than that. Obviously, points deduction, perhaps even transfer to the championship or to the league, and whatever the league would do, heaven knows. So this is very, very serious. And imagine the impact it would have on other clubs. And I'm thinking about clubs who might hope to qualify for the Champions League. If Manchester City, who is a regular in the top 4, they finish 5th that season, when do you make decisions? When do you actually communicate the decision? Which it is a minefield. And I have to say, I was listening to you earlier on, and I think that even though I was myself very frustrated by how long it took the Premier League to actually do something or to say what they were doing, I can perfectly understand that they wanted to be absolutely 100% sure of their case before going public.
Yeah.
And the way that they actually announced their decision to charge Manchester City was in a way typical and exemplary of the way they've been proceeding, in as much that Manchester City had no prior warning about that. And I think that indicates the Premier League are very, very serious about it, but they're also very cautious about it, which is totally understandable. I mean, a funny thing, I use, like many of my colleagues, I used to email the Premier League like every 3 or 4 months asking them, where are you at exactly with the Manchester City case? And every time I got the same answer. It was a cut and paste email, which was the response to my very first email in 2019. This is still what I was getting like 3 months ago. It was a cut and paste from an email that was 4 years old almost. And so it was completely waterproof. They wanted nothing to leak. Because the other thing, if things are leaking, you endanger the whole process.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to have a trial by public opinion or by the media, which then afterwards the defendant could say, hey, come on, guys, I think you're a bit biased here because of what has been said about us, which is what happened in part to the UEFA investigation when one of the people who were involved, you will remember that, went public about it before the decision had been taken. And that was a very, very big mistake to make in the circumstances.
Yes, very fair points. I think the watertight aspect of the investigation is a rarity, actually, and very impressive in some respects. Still 2-0 Liverpool, 68 minutes on the clock. Things are heating up on the pitch. Manchester City, Arsenal on Wednesday more than captures the eye. City have had a curious couple of weeks. The departure of Cancelo and De Bruyne on the bench and the loss to Spurs. They were better at the weekend against Aston Villa. Arsenal, more than just curious on the pitch. A wobble, 1 point from 6. I know you were at the Brentford game. We'll come to VAR in a moment. But just in general terms, Philippe, the psychology of this group, do they strike you as a manager and a group of players who will accept that pretty much every Premier League campaign, even one of a champion, has bumps and bruises and poor moments, or will a certain stage fright set in on the back of these two games?
I don't think that we've seen that what we've seen against Everton and Brentford was stage fright. I don't think so. I think the nature of the opposition must be recognised. They played Everton probably at the worst possible time, when a new manager just came in, and a manager who knows Arsenal inside out and knows how to play against Arsenal as well inside out. And then against a very, very, very good Brentford side, which is basically fighting for a place in Europe next year. And two teams which, by the way, do something that Manchester City won't be doing on Wednesday, and something which actually presents problems for this particular Arsenal side. I think the problem is more sporting and on the pitch than off the pitch. They both play with very low blocks. And I think Arsenal find it very difficult to play against teams which have got low blocks. They've struggled before this season against in similar circumstances. Against Manchester City, I don't think they will have that particular problem. In fact, it would be quite the opposite. And they're an opponent which, regardless of their class and their quality, in a way their game is better suited to what Arsenal are doing. And I don't feel really that there is such a big drop. I think it's more of a wobble, turbulence, not a crash. They were actually better against Brentford than they were against Everton. And especially in the second half, which is one thing that Mikel Arteta will probably take heart from. And the other thing as well, would we say the same thing? Would we have the same discourse if, unfortunately for them, and fortunately for Brentford, we didn't have a massive meltdown of VAR and of the refereeing in that particular game? Would we? I'm not so sure about it. We tend to be very much, looking at, that's the result, so that's what it means.
Yes. No, that's fair.
Having been at the game, I thought Brentford were absolutely terrific in the first half, by the way. And if they had been leading by 1 or 2 goals to nil, nobody would have had anything to say about it. But then Arsenal had a proper reaction and started to play like they have done in the past few months. So I'm not right now too bothered for them in terms of they're having big problems and so forth. Some players look a little bit just on the blunt side. I'm thinking in particular of Gabriel Martinelli, who has been absolutely magnificent since the beginning of the season, but he seems for me to be a little bit to have heavier legs, so to speak. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised if Mikel Arteta decided to put Leandro Trossard, who's been very lively when he's come on from the start against Man City. But again, it's a very hard game to call because, to be honest, with Guardiola, you also have absolutely no idea what he will have up his sleeve to counter the threat of Arsenal. Absolutely no idea of that. But I wouldn't take that too seriously. But it's a strange season in many ways, isn't it? Because there are many things which are happening which nobody quite had foreseen, and nobody is quite dominating the league as we've become accustomed to, be it Manchester City or Liverpool, indeed. And because of that, I think when things are not working in quite the same way and are becoming a little bit more actually interesting, where people are dropping points left, right and centre, which all the top teams have done this season, we certainly think, there must be something wrong. We'll say, no, actually, that's football.
Yes.
That's what it's supposed to be like. What we've been living the past 5-6 years is totally abnormal. We're actually going back to a kind of semi-reality here.
Yeah, fair point. The Arsenal management and players aggrieved, obviously. 2 points dropped on account of VAR in their eyes. So Lee Mason is the first ever Premier League video assistant referee. He's in his second season. I think people generally au fait with what happened at this stage. He took 2 minutes and 20 seconds to check if Pinnock was A-OK. And then it seemed once he had dealt with the Pinnock situation, the pressure to hurry up, which by the way applies to so many sports at the moment, and mistakes are being made as a result. Rugby in particular, we were just talking about it in the last hour. He was perhaps rushed, and he took just 14 seconds thereafter to do a quick check of the rest of the goal and obviously missed the fact that Christian Norgard was very much offside. Goal given, and I dare say when Lee Mason realised his mistake, he had his hands over his eyes and couldn't believe it. So human error, I don't know to what extent human error can be eliminated from VAR, but it certainly remains a factor.
Well, yes. I mean, there are people who would say that the new offside technology, which is being developed, would enable to avoid this kind of situation where a human being is simply, as you said, pressured into making a very quick decision. But that, in a way, the biggest argument against VAR in this case was not the fact that they got the decision wrong, if you see what I mean, or the fact that even it took a long time. I'm being a bit paradoxical here. I think it shows that the idea that VAR would do away with human error is a myth. It's not true. And which, in a way, is more problematic, isn't it? So it might be that there are technological, advances which mean, and I know that Arsene Wenger is a big believer in that, in having the possibility of the ability to track the players on the pitch in such a way that you have almost an automatic signal when a player is offside in a particular situation. So we might come to that, which will then create another problem, which will be the fact that there will be two different kinds of football. The kind of football, which is already the case, by the way, up to an extent, kind of football where this technology is available, and this kind of football where the technology is not available. So therefore, you don't have the same game. It's not played in the same way, which is also, I think, problematic on almost a quasi-philosophical level. So, it was, as you said, at least they put their hands up, which is an improvement. And let's hope that, I would like, and I think many referees and perhaps the people who operate VAR as well would be quite happy to go further in that direction. Like, for example, I don't know if you know that, but in MLS, the referees do speak to the press after the games, and they have to answer 3 questions which are put together by a pool of journalists to explain the decisions they've been taking in the game. There is no such thing in the Premier League. I can't understand, I don't know why, because it actually leads to better comprehension of the laws of the game and also better understanding between the different parties. And anything that can help this understanding is a good thing, because the same thing that we thought that VAR would perhaps make things a little bit better in terms of talking about the game, analysing the game, it's quite the opposite. We're talking more about refereeing and VAR. That's what we're doing right now, isn't it? Than we have perhaps ever before. So, yeah, it was not a good weekend in that respect, I must say.
I'm curious for your thoughts on the situation surrounding Manchester United. The reports today, very much that Qatari bid will be in amongst the other bidders. So the group handling the sale for Manchester United, they've asked anyone interested to submit their bids by the soft deadline of this Friday. And just in case you're thinking of bidding, Philippe, they want the bid to be 1 paragraph long, and they want the amount that you're bidding and proof of funds. So you can get cracking. I'm reading curious things here about this situation. The Qatari investors are linked to the country's royal family. I'm also reading the Qatari bid has nothing to do with PSG owners. There are certain lines which look completely contradictory to me here. What's your understanding of what's coming from Qatar?
Well, for me, it's very clear. If the money is coming from a Qatar investment fund, it's coming from the royal family. And if it's coming from the royal family, it's coming from the owners of Paris Saint-Germain. Anything else is obfuscation. And that's as clear as that. There was actually talk at one point, to contextualize that, of the Qataris disinvesting from PSG to go somewhere else. It's something which had been on the grapevine for a while. And I don't know if it was because they had Manchester United in mind. But the idea that public investment fund in Qatar wouldn't be linked to the royal family is insane. For anybody who knows anything about the way things work in Qatar, it's obvious.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is that if we are going to see a situation where there is a more a selling of a stake in the club, like a first step, rather than taking control over the whole of the club. First thing. And the second thing, well, I'm waiting with great impatience actually for the exact identity of this particular Qatari bidder, because I cannot think that it can be anything other than an institution linked to the Qatari royal family, the Qatari government.
Yes.
And in which case, well, maybe UEFA and FIFA, but UEFA to start with, will have to look into this topic, which is multi-club ownership. Which is one which has been swept under the carpet. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? Because I seem to remember that a few years ago, it was really a target of UEFA to prevent that from happening, because multi-club ownership leads to all kinds of practices which honestly shouldn't happen in the game. And that hasn't prevented people from building huge portfolios of clubs. We were talking about the City Football Group. Well, they've got a dozen clubs on their books. You've got private investors or investment funds. By the way, investment funds means you don't know where the money is coming from, because they come from an investment fund which is taking other people's money. People like John Textor, for example, who's taken over Lyon, but also has an interest in Crystal Palace. And you've got dozens, actually. I think there's, at the moment in Europe, a friend of mine, Steve Mannery, is a specialist of this. I think he's come across more than 200 cases of multi-club ownership.
Okay.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. And I hope there's going to be a level of scrutiny. Maybe I'm talking nonsense when maybe there is a super rich Qatari billionaire who happens to be completely unrelated to the royal family and who would like to put his money into the club. Is always supported and all these sort of things. I don't quite believe it, but maybe I'm wrong. But in any case, I would love to know the answer.
OTB AM with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scores wrote every night.